Could I have everybody make their seats, please, so we can get this meeting started? I apologize for being 1 minute late. We got a lot of stuff on the agenda tonight. We got a lot of special guests here, so hopefully we'll tend to their needs first thing, and they can run for the door. I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Destin City Council, December 17, 2018, to order. Up first tonight, we have Pastor Matthew Metcalf from Shoreline Church to lead us in the invocation. All rise, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Father God, we thank you so much for the opportunity to live in such a beautiful place. God, to live in a community where so many people are involved and want to see the greater good done, and God, a place where we can raise a good family. Father, I pray that you would lead and guide and direct the mayor and the council members tonight by your wisdom. And Lord, give them strength, give them peace, and may this place be ruled by your peace tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
All right, first on the items to address is the approval of our agenda. Does anyone on the council have any changes to the president, or changes and or additions, I should say? City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, under number 2, we would like to add item special elections resolution. We would also like to add presentation to Mr. Jeff Burns, and we would also like to add airport road discussion, 3 items.
Okay, we have a request to add special election, a resolution for our former city attorney, who's now the judge, and a presentation on Airport Road, I believe, guardrail by Mr. Mitchell. Anything else from anyone else on the council?
Motion to approve, amended.
Second.
I got a motion, and I got a second. Seeing no further discussion. The vote is unanimous, so moved. All right. Next on, we have approval of the minutes. Item 1A, approval of minutes of October 22nd, 2018, City Council Workshop.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Vote unanimous, so moved. Next, approval of minutes of September 17th, 2018, regular City Council meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. Vote is unanimous, so moved. All right, item 2A. I guess I got to get up. Employee of the Year, 2018, City of Destin. Yes. I can't memorize none of this stuff. Tonight, we've got a special presentation with the Employee of the Year. Each year, an Employee of the Year is nominated and selected by coworkers to celebrate qualities that inspire us to achieve the city's mission, which states, we are an organization that strives to provide a healthy, safe quality of life, balancing the needs of our residents with the expectations of our visitors, and provide open, clear, accurate communication. And the 2018 Employee of the Year Award has become a tradition and is now in its 28th year. And so, as mayor, it's a pleasure to honor Public Service Department employee Jack Kine. Is that it? Did I say it good? Keen. As the 2018 Employee of the Year. Jack, please come forward. Congratulations, Jack. Here's your plaque. I'm not done with you yet. Jack began working for the city and Public Service Department in October 2002 as a maintenance technician. In December of 2013, he was promoted to equipment operator, and he's responsible for, as you guessed it, operating a lot of different equipment. You can do it all, right?
Oh, yeah.
But there's always this saying, he's a jack of all trades. Well, right here, he exemplifies that. His coworkers identified these core values: transparency, teamwork, integrity, professionalism, and stewardship. It's in those dedicated tasks that has brought him to this point. Jack, these are but a few things that your fellow employees and friends and coworkers have written about you. He's respectful of everyone and is respected within his department. People look to him for his advice and leadership. He's a team player, always willing to take on a task. Jack of all trades. That's where I got that from. He analyzes every situation, arrives at the best solution while listening, considering all opinions. Professionally and promptly understands our role in providing services to our citizens, and we all thank you for that. On behalf of our citizens, the elected officials and staff, please accept this plaque. You already got your, what was that, a cash certificate?
Yes.
He already got that, guys. This edge plaque commemorating your achievements, and you will also have a reserved parking space at Public Services for the next year. Congratulations, Jack. Thank you very much. All right, I can't sit down yet. Trying to make this fast. Thanks, sir. Congratulations. All right, next we have, are you going to read those, or we're going to do Santa Claus? Well, next, I'm honored to give this out and make this City of Destin proclamation. Behind every good man is a good woman. Santa Claus is no exception to that either. The City of Destin proclamation honoring Cindy Posey, also known as Mrs. Claus, for her years of service to the City of Destin. Whereas Cindy Posey has more than 30 years of service to the City of Destin, and whereas Cindy Posey has served as Mrs. Claus since the first Christmas parade in 1984, and whereas Cindy Posey has served as Mrs. Claus during the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony at Destin Community Center, and whereas Cindy Posey brings each Christmas to boys and girls of all ages, and whereas Cindy Posey generously donates toys to all children during the annual Christmas parade. Now, therefore, I, Gary Jarvis, Mayor of the City of Destin, Florida, do hereby thank Mrs. Claus, also known as Cindy Posey, for all her years of service. So done this day, 17th day of December. Congratulations, ma'am. Would you like to say?
We got you. I hope I don't fall. I'm okay. Oh, gosh, I don't know what to say, except it's my honor to be up in that fire truck and to see those kids and their faces and throw a toy and watch their face light up. As you well know, my husband was Mr. Claus, but before him, I had a lot of different Mr. Clauses. No pun intended, honey. And then he decided to retire, and now my son is Mr. Claus. And I once said to him, son, whoever thought Mom would be sitting on the top of the fire truck with you? Thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you so much. I announce it. I might announce it. Next, we're going to have the 2018 winners of the 34th annual Destin Christmas Parade. The theme this year is Christmas at the Beach. So, starting with the Noel Award, sponsored by Destin Rotary, we have the McGuire's Pipe Band. Next, the Elf Award, sponsored by Jim Leofow State Farm U.S. Gold Gymnastics. Okay, next we have the Santa's Helper Award, sponsored by AJ Seafood and Oyster Bar, All-Star Twirlers. No? Civic Club Award, sponsored by Emerald Coast Knights of Columbus, the Destin Dolphin Cheerleaders. Next, we have the Chamber Award, sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce, the Big Kahunas. Next, we have the Angel Award, sponsored by Mike Cheney, Allstate, Destin Methodist. And finally, we have the Crowd Pleaser Award, and we have two winners, Emerald Coast Parrot Head Club and Fort Walton Beach Mardi Gras Club Queen Susan. All right, thank you, everyone. Now we have item 2D, and that'll be the 2018, no, never mind, I already did that. Destin Fire Control District proposed change to Clement Taylor Park. Who's doing that presentation? You are, Mike? You doing that?
Mike Buckingham, 510 Calhoun. Council, thank you. Mayor, thank you, sir. We're here tonight to show in front of you, I think you should have the plan of the new drawing for the proposed site for the Clement Taylor Park upgrades for the remodel. And you'll see in the bottom left corner where the existing bathrooms, and behind the existing bathrooms in that corner is where the proposed site for the mini substation here in the soon future, hopefully. This plan here is in front of you, so hopefully you all will be able to have a consensus on forwarding this to the Treasury to verify that the grant will still be available. Yes, sir. You're good? Well, thank you, sir. Any questions?
Lance, I don't think we have anything to vote on about this. I mean,
No, as long
what
as
are we
there's
doing here?
consensus with the council, the council had just asked us to bring it back when we had the final drawing so we could submit it to the U.S. Treasury through the county.
And yet my concern when the proposal was first brought forward was that we didn't want anything to hold the park up.
That is correct.
And so as long as your president, the plan as drawn, it won't interfere with that, then
Exactly.
then I don't
Exactly.
personally have a problem with it.
Well, thank you.
That was just the only
Correct.
deal. And I guess we'll put that on the we'll wait until we find out where we're at with that before we try to take any legislative action.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Does anyone, Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple questions, but I think they're more towards staff, maybe. I have a couple different renderings of what this has looked like from the beginning plans, and I noticed a few changes, and I'm not sure if things have been taken out or moved.
Great. This is the existing plan. This is the existing plan. This is the existing park now.
Okay.
This is the new proposed with the new bathrooms, the new pavilions, and the new parking lot. And then this is the part that's just carved out.
Okay, so the part that's carved out here in the corner, that's what you guys anticipate needing to use?
Mike, could you stay at the microphone so it can stay on public record? Yeah, that'd be fine. Just turn off this other one. Just so we can keep it
Yeah,
on
no,
public.
no worries. So, I know y'all had mentioned wanting to put a fireboat in, and I don't see that on here. Would you be utilizing what's already there, or would you be adding to it? Or?
That is something that we would like to get with the staff and the council, and we're open all the way. Whatever works for the city, for the council, for the staff, we're on board with all. So
Okay.
that's going to be, as far as the spot to park the boat, the dock, will be at a later date.
Okay.
The
Ms.
biggest
Ramswell,
concern-
Mr. Buckingham, do we have a pointer or something we could use so that,
yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you.
So the area I was talking about was the dark, bold rectangle there in the bottom right. And then what I had just asked about is whether they would be utilizing the existing dock that's there at the top left for their boat, and that's what he was explaining. So go ahead.
Correct. As far as where the staff or the city wants us to put the boat, we'll be more than happy to discuss that and work with you all at that when the time comes. Yes, it was our understanding. The biggest concern is to make sure that the grant money was still going to be available with this taken out. So this is the proposal, the plan of sending it to them to at least verify, which we feel pretty comfortable it's going to be fine. But that was the first step, is what the council wanted us to do before we went any farther.
Gotcha.
So we as the fire district do not want to go any farther until we find out if the grant will, be interrupted. If it's not, we can go forward, then we'll come back to you all with a plan for, as you can see, the less than 5% of the park right here that we'll be using.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
That is a new pavilion. That's a new pavilion that's being built? Yes, sir, correct. Yes, sir. Yes.
And
Everything
Mr. Bucky-
outside- Everything outside this little square is the city. That's Clement Taylor Park. That's completely getting remodeled.
I have a question, and this probably can be addressed later. It would make more sense if the dock was closer to the fire department
That is
building.
correct.
But right now, we're just leave it as it is, as we're dealing with the grant money
That
and the
is
plans
correct.
as they are,
That's what we
correct?
were asked to do. That's why we're here tonight. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, and I have no problem checking to make sure that everything's
Thank you.
kosher with the state.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Braden,
Thank you, Mayor. And when this is presented to the state, you said this was this parcel taken out. Is it going to be presented that this footprint is going to be taken out of the park and rezoned altogether?
No. I don't think so. I mean, that's a question to the city manager, but I don't think it's going to have to be rezoned. All that parcel is just a little carved out piece that we could show the way the park's being built and send it back to the Treasury to get their approval for the grant, to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the grant. And then that little parcel, Rodney, is just going to be a very small little building for a little substation there.
Is that,
But
there's
it's
not
not-
any measurements on that. Is that like 100 by 100 or what, do you know what size that is?
Yeah, it's a lot less than that. It's less than 100. I want to tell you it's like 60 by 80.
60 by?
Yeah, as you can see, it's less than 5% of the entire park. And for y'all that's been there for years, you'll know that where the existing bathroom sets is up here in this corner right here. So all this over on this side and in the front, it's just land that has never been used as the park. That's why we have tried to choose the piece that is the less
Utilized?
I have a question for city manager.
That's all I got, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Stand by just a second, Mike. Now, will they lease that, will the fire district lease that property from us under this scenario, or would they own it, would we sell it to them, or would we just, how's that work?
Honestly, at this point, for the purpose of this conversation, we are just saying that there's a future use in that box right there that we want to use it for other than a park. And then we will be able to address however we handle
Exactly.
that in the
We're
future.
more on board with all the above.
I know one of the questions I've been asked is, why wouldn't y'all go back to the former station that you have across the road? And, I mean, I can speculate, but do you want to answer that in your own words?
Well, for a couple of reasons. Staff, back when we first approached trying to get over on the west side of town, turned us down on that. That was our plan. I met with Captain Charlie multiple times, the sheriff's department and the city engineer and everybody, and it was just, we were all on board, but the staff wasn't. And the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons of being over here is we need another boat on the water bad. The amount of calls that we're getting is just, it's unbelievable. So one of the biggest reasons, get on the west side and be able to have a boat on the west side. We need 2 boats. 1 boat's not enough anymore.
And in that particular scenario, sorry, Ms. Ramswell, right now where the fire boat's at, they have to drive through the harbor in emergency situation.
Right.
Going fast is not
You've seen
real
it.
prudent lots
Yeah,
of
you've
times.
seen that.
Traffic's horrendous, where here they're closer to Crab Island, they're closer to everywhere else to the bay.
Correct.
And they don't have minimum wake requirements, stuff like that. So their response time, not just being on the west side, but actually being able to operate the vessel at speed would be a big improvement on
Right.
what the fire department has at this time.
Correct. Every minute counts.
I know in the past, I've looked at the numbers, but not in the last year or two. Does the west side still account for like a quarter to a
Oh,
third
it's
of
over.
all the
It's-
calls?
It's every bit
And
of a third. It's a little bit more than that.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the west end is really, really grown.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, see no further discussion? We're done? Thank you,
Good.
Mike.
Y'all,
Appreciate it,
thank you
Ms.
so much.
Buckingham.
Appreciate it.
All right, up next, we have a few additional, and then we'll go right into public comment, which is going to be lengthy tonight, I have a feeling. I'm going to hold everyone to the 3-minute time limit, and if you run over, I'm going to interrupt you nicely and just say, wrap up your thoughts, please, in the next 15 or 30 seconds. So don't get mad, I'm not being mean. It's just we got a lot of people that want to talk. And you can always fill out a yellow card and come back up and talk on another subject.
Don't we have the 3 items that
Yes,
we
I'm going to
added
add those
for-
now. I'm just kind of giving, kind of sharing with our audience a recommendation that we're going to keep our public testimony 3-minute time limit fairly tight tonight because we have a lot of people who want to talk. We have 3 more items, and we'll start with the first one. Lance, would you like to talk about the special election because we've had a resignation here on the council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Dixon has turned in his notice that he no longer wishes to serve on the city council for personal reasons. For that reason, by charter, we need to schedule a special election because he has more than 1 year left in his term. The council can appoint a temporary person at a future meeting to fulfill part of that obligation, but for the last year, we need to have a special election. Fortunately for the city, there are some other municipal elections scheduled in March this year already, which we can piggyback on if we get this done tonight, allowing us to save some money and expedite the process. So we're asking for council's approval on Resolution 18-48.
Mayor, I move that the City Council adopts Resolution 18-48 authorizing the City of Destin special election pursuant to Section 3.09C2 of the Destin City Charter to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of Councilmember Tuffy Dixon to be held on March 12, 2019.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. The only discussion I have on that is to fill the interim slot. I think that we can just, we're on TV and we have plenty of people in the audience. If anybody'd like to throw their name in the hat, contact the city manager and we will consider you at the next meeting and we will take the list of people that have applied. It'll be in our briefing documents and we could just have a motion and pick one and vote one in for that meeting. I think that'd be the most transparent, easiest way to do it versus, just anybody wants to volunteer, remember what that means. Then the council will give consideration, pick an interim at the next scheduled council meeting. Mrs. Lance.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, if interested parties would try to get me that information a week before the meeting, then I can have it published in the agenda item for council to review.
And they're only going to be serving for like 4 meetings until the election, because right after the election, then whoever gets elected will serve that last year. But any of the ones that volunteer to be on the board, on the council for that 4 weeks or four meetings, they can also run for a permanent position.
Sure. And I don't think that's a problem. Preble, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I was just wondering if we should call a special meeting before the end of the year, and that way that person could be in place for our first meeting in January. We do have so much business before us. It'd be good to have someone up to speed for the next meeting.
You could even call just a special meeting for like 5:30 p.m. on January 7th, 2019. I do have another special meeting that I am going to ask you guys to call later in the agenda, though, at 5 that day. So keep that in mind when you're picking a time.
For January 7th, you said?
Yes.
Should I make that motion now?
You can.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make the motion then to call a special meeting for 5:30 p.m. on Monday, January 7th, in order to discuss and select a interim candidate or interim council member.
We have a motion.
I'll second it, Mayor.
And we have a second. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none? The vote is unanimous, so moved. Again, to our friends here in the audience and on TV, if you'd like to serve as an interim city council member for approximately 4 meetings, contact the city manager and put your name in the ring. All right, next we have it's a resolution. Which one? Where is that? I got so much paperwork up here. Here we are. How do you want to handle this? You want to just you want to read it? Mr. City Attorney, you read most resolutions? And then I'll I'll ask for a motion and a second and then a vote.
Yeah, I have for y'all's consideration Resolution 18-47, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Destin, Florida, recognizing Jeffrey L. Burns, Esquire, for his service and dedication to the City of Destin as former city attorney, recognizing Jeffrey L. Burns as the first Destin native to secure a judgeship, and further recognizing him as Destin's first circuit court judge.
So there's the resolution 1847. Can I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
We have a motion to accept this resolution.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Anyone want to throw Mr. Burns some parting words? We're on video, and unfortunately, he couldn't attend, but he'll hear us anyways. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take this to a vote. So moved. Congratulations, Mr. Jeffrey Burns.
Mr. Mayor, we have Mr. Steve Minchell here to have a brief discussion on the airport road curve that has become a popular item amongst our residents.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm Steve Menschel. I'm here tonight as the chairman of the Destin Public Works Public Safety Committee to provide you information regarding the local agency program, or LAP, for Airport Road between Quail Circle and Mattie Kelly Boulevard. For several years, the Public Works and Public Safety Committee has been discussing the safety issues on Airport Road at the curve and the number of traffic crashes that take place at that location. Earlier this year, you were presented Resolution 1821, which allows the city to enter into a LAP with the state for the Airport Road project. I realize this is a work in progress at this time. With this as background, let me continue. The Public Works Public Safety Committee continued to discuss this project at regular monthly meetings, and one of the meetings earlier this year, Councilman Dixon attended, and we discussed some immediate safety fixes that the city could accomplish now, realizing it will be quite some time until the LAP project is completed. During our Public Works Public Safety Committee meeting, staff raised the concern that if the city did some safety improvements, that these improvements might jeopardize the state grant funding. In your packet tonight, almost at the very end, that email's in there that I'm about to talk about. The email contained in your packet dated October 4th from Mr. Destin Castells, FDOT Local Programs Administrator, states in part, "It is my understanding that there is concern that the installing guardrail, the city could impact the safety funds that have been allocated for the improvements on Airport Road. This is not the case. With that said, FDOT confirmed that the city can make safety improvements without fear of losing state funds. At our December 11th Public Works Public Safety Committee meeting, the committee motioned and unanimously approved a motion to suggest to the council that the council approve moving forward with safety improvements along a portion of Airport Road near the curve location. The Public Works Public Safety Committee also suggests that the city speak with the county and ascertain if the county would enter into a partnership with the city to help defray the cost of improvements. As we all know, the airport fence along Airport Road at the curve has been knocked down or destroyed countless times, and these improvements will certainly result in less destruction to airport property and help save lives. The following are some of the suggested improvements to consider. Those photographs up there are both north and south at the curve that we're talking about, that small portion. Number one would be the placement of guardrails along portions of the curve on Airport Road. In your packet, you also have the photo example taken at Scenic 98. There's another example on Scenic 98 showing the type of guardrail. That's a picture in there also. Along portions of Airport Road, beef up the edge and install ribbon curving to prevent car tires from slipping into the grass, which then causes the drivers to swerve off the grass in an attempt to get back on the roadway, which in many cases cause overturned vehicles. And finally, install some raised pavement markers across the roadway at the curve on Airport Road, which would cause the vehicles to possibly slow down. If you put the raised pavement markers at the curve, there are no houses there, so a noise element wouldn't play into exactly. That's it right now, if there's any questions.
I have one for you, Stephen. Right now, there's a temporary flashing sign that says slow down. I know that in areas, another thing that helps are those radar trailers that flash a light. Would you guys consider that additional safety precaution?
Anything, you know,
Right.
right now, there's a sheriff's office sign out there as well, a big portable sign and whatnot, and they just look at the signs and keep doing what they're doing. Obviously, the one thing that we didn't cover, but something that's a recipe for disaster, is you've got those fuel tanks right there, and it's just going to be a matter of time till a certain large vehicle explodes those tanks. Okay, so that's why I think the airport would possibly consider entering in a partnership, because if we put those guardrails up and prevent crashing through the fence, it's going to be a safety thing.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you. Steve, was there talk about cutting grooves in that pavement or concreting it, or making a rougher surface?
In the lap thing, this is a stopgap thing for the next year or two till the lap thing goes. The city's still working on the lap project, so it's going to be probably a year until we really see it. They're going to be changing the component of the roadway for a less slick surface, but again, that's possibly a year or two out at least.
So in the meantime, we're just going to put some guardrails up?
And/or combinations of those things, or anything else that the city would do. The key thing was, the question was, if we did anything, the city, would we lose our funding? And the answer is we won't. That's the key thing.
Mr. Marler.
Thank you, Steve. Everything you've said is perfect, but, you know, if people would actually drive the posted speed limit, we wouldn't have this problem. It's like I told you earlier today, you can't fix stupid.
I understand.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Do we need a motion here? Can we take a legislative action to based on this presentation? I mean, we've talked about it, Mr. Dixon, especially about wanting to do something, or should we just go ahead and should we take a motion and make legislative action, or should we just have this on the next agenda?
I can tell you that sadly Mr. Dixon and I have spoke, and he planned on motioning it tonight.
You can take a motion tonight.
Well, I'd like to entertain one if somebody'd like to take a stab at it.
I'll make it whatever we have to word it at. I'm not sure how he was going to word it, so. But,
I'll second it.
However it can be worded, Mr. Clerk.
Just that your proposal is to spend the $10,000 to $15,000 to install guardrails as a temporary measure on Airport Road.
That works.
Yes, sir.
That works.
Okay, I have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion on this particular item? Let's take it to a vote. It's a unanimous so moved. Mr. Menschel, when you get back in front of your safety advisory panel, talk about and investigate the cost of not either a temporary trailer or maybe even a permanent radar, speed, flashing light warning thing to address the folks that Mr. Marler was speaking of. Okay?
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. There's so much going on tonight, and I may have missed it, but I know that we voted on having the special meeting. Did we actually do the vote for the special election?
I thought you did. Did you know?
Did we? Okay. They've all blurred together, and I wasn't sure we covered
I'm
it.
moving fast. So
Okay.
I feel your pain.
That's good.
But we got a lot of folks here that want to share their thoughts. So if I'm going too fast at any time, just make sure we're clear. But we legislated that as well, correct? Okay, we're good. All right, and so now we're going to enter into our public comment period, right? We've addressed all the additional ones. And again, I'll just remind you, there's a 3-minute time limit. I have some blue cards. We go through those first, and we'll do the yellow ones. And when we get to the 3 minutes and you're still have your points to be made, I'll gently remind you at that point to wrap up your thoughts in the next 15 or 30 seconds and just do the best you can. And we appreciate your comments. I didn't have the chance to add for another presentation the next person that's going to come up, but and I'll ask for your opinion, but Captain Jim Green, President of Destin Charter Boat Association, under this segment, I'll just let you go ahead and share your thoughts. And I think Captain Green's his talk is he'll probably want some action out of this council, but because it is part of the public testimony portion, maybe we can either legislate that a little later on or put it on the next agenda.
Appreciate
Go
it.
ahead, Mr. Green.
Captain Jim Green, President of the Destin Charter Boat Association. I handed you all a letter, and and I'm just going to read it to you, and it's concerning the dredging operation. The Destin Charter Boat Association comes to you today deeply concerned about the state of the Destin's East Pass. As you all know, the Destin Harbor and Fire fishing fleet is a major attraction and significant driver in our local economy. Due to the current status of the navigable channel, or lack thereof, our captains and crews are having to cancel trips during the season because of these dangers that threaten not only their passenger safety but also their equipment. In 2013, the City of Destin funded an economic study done by the Haas Center, and it determined the for-hire fishing industry in Destin contributed over $173 million annually to our local economy. The current shoaling in Destin's East Pass and on the Ebb Shoal threatens that contribution and brings instability to a founding industry in Destin. This council and the Okaloosa County Commissioners recognized that need and attempted to get the dredge going during the Noriega Point project. Unfortunately, that equipment was not capable. In August, Congressman Gates, Commissioner Wines, together surveyed the pass and saw that firsthand the issue we were facing, and both agreed that it was bad and getting worse. Since then, we've had the tidal effects of one of the strongest hurricane landfalls in our nation's history. After Hurricane Michael, the one natural spill out on the Ebb Shoal is now filled in, and it made it very tough the last 3 weeks of October. And this has further exacerbated our problem. As president of the Destin Charter Boat Association, I'm coming before you and asking for a resolution declaring a public safety and economic emergency to acknowledge the dire need for dredging of the Destin's East Pass and the Ebb Shoal. It is my hope that this declaration will not only get the attention of the general public about the issue we face, but also the lawsuit that has been put in place to stop the work has the potential for impunitive harm to the professional fishing industry, private anglers, and the commerce conducted through our pass. We also hope that this declaration from the city will demonstrate to the judge that preventing this project from going forward could be catastrophic to our upcoming season. Again, I appreciate your consideration on this request, and I hope that we can work together to find a solution.
Mr. Green, I have a question from Mr. Oberdeer.
Okay, so I know I think it's Thursday, the TDC is having an emergency meeting to discuss the dredging. And so I think this would go a long ways towards helping them support whatever it is, whatever action they're going to take. So I'd certainly be in favor of passing this resolution.
Thank you, sir. That'd be great.
And I'm not sure what your schedule is, Captain Green, but maybe yourself or one of the DCBA board members, if they could attend and represent the fleet at that meeting, that would be really helpful as well.
I'll be back in town on Thursday night, so I should be able to attend that.
I think it's Thursday morning.
Oh,
Thursday morning, so you might want to get Jason or one of the other guys, okay?
All right,
I'll work that out with you. Mr. Marler.
This is basically for staff. I thought back in the summer or something, or at the end of the first part of Noriega Point, we had contracted for somebody to come in and do exactly what Mr. Green is asking for in September because they couldn't come out when we wanted them to in the spring.
As far as the dredge is concerned, there has been a whole host of issues that have arisen lately that have prevented that from taking place that we're actually going to get into later in the meeting.
Okay, all right.
And so basically, this presentation by the Destin Charter Boat Association and Captain Green as their president is they would like for this council to establish a resolution declaring an emergency situation with Destin East Pass for dredging. And can we maybe address that during the city manager's report on dredging?
My recommendation on the consideration of a state of emergency would be that under our code of ordinances, either the city manager or the mayor declare the state of emergency, and then at the next council meeting, the council can consider a resolution supporting that state of emergency.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Green. I'll take that into account.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cap. For those of you that filled out cards on short-term rental, it's a public hearing, and we will call you up during that public hearing portion. I've got some other cards for other issues that aren't public hearings, and that's what we'll do under this section. So I'm not skipping you. You get to come up to the podium when we're addressing short-term rentals specifically. So next up will be Bill Reddington, and he wants to talk about the Crosstown Connector. Mr. Reddington.
Good evening to you all. Bill Reddington, 722 Vintage Circle, Destin, Florida. As I've looked at the situation on crosstown traffic, I still don't ever see anything or anything about where it's going to go short of leaving everybody at Benning Drive. Okay, I know that Azalea has a 20-foot easement probably on each side so that they can make that a 4-lane. But that still doesn't change the problem of directing that traffic all in through there to what happens when it makes it to the bridge. Okay, that part's not going away. Okay, when I drove over here this evening, Commons Drive, again, headed west, was backed up well beyond Walmart, okay, as a 1-lane. Now you're talking about diverting all that traffic over there. I mean, this is going to turn into another nightmare for the residents and the people that live in there on a daily basis. And that's the part I just don't quite understand. Why is everybody talking about doing it when there's no solution as to where it's going to go? I mean, I have read, a fair amount, probably not everything, but I see it stopping at Benning.
No, not right now.
And I know that that big lot on the corner of Benning and Legion just went under contract. I assume that's y'all, okay? I know that you're trying to eminent domain some other properties back in there where the townhouses are, but same answer, you still get to Benning, and then what do you do? That's the part I'd sure like to have some clarification on sometime. So that's what I have to say with that, and I think I'll wait for the beach rental people.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Bill. Thank you.
Y'all have Merry Christmas too, by the way.
You too, sir. Next up, Kenneth Wade.
Mayor, council members.
I'm sorry.
Mayor, council members. Kenneth Wade, 2970 Scenic Highway 98. I'm here to make a proposal, and you have some information, I think, in front of you. I'm proposing that for the beach access expansion that we might consider my property, Lot 3, which is 2970 Scenic Highway 98, and Lot 2, 2968 Scenic Highway 98. This is the Hutchinson Street access is a very busy location. There's a large number of rental houses and condos at this area. And so by putting these two properties together, I think it would provide for, well, not only quite a bit more beach, expanding the 60 feet that you have on the Hutchinson Street access, and adding 136 extra feet there from the two contiguous properties. And also in consideration, on the west side, you were considering a piece of property that was 60 feet wide. And actually, my property is for sale, has been for sale, and it's listed the same price as the 60-foot property. So in essence, the city would obtain 18 feet of beach and road front free. And anyway, I think that this makes quite a bit of sense. Certainly would entertain questions about that.
Kenneth, in our Public Beach Initiative discussion we're fixing to have under City Manager Report, the addition of the your two properties or the properties that you're speaking of are included
Yes.
for consideration. So
Okay.
we'll be taking, trying to get a motion in the past for appraisals for, it was 7 properties, but with the addition of your property, it'll be 8.
Right. I might add one other thing. My friend and owner of the 2968 property, he lives in the Miami area, was not able to be here tonight, but I think that he would be willing to sell for a similar price to what we're asking. I'm pretty sure that my property will make appraisal, or very close to it at least, and so at least another consideration for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next up will be Mr. Ron Sandstead.
I'm Ron Sandstead, 337 Calhoun, and I've come tonight to give you a little show and tell. As you remember, I was here about a month ago, and I told you about our banner art project that we're doing on Main Street, and so I brought one of the proofs that with me tonight, and to show you all what it's going to look like. This is one of our artist banners, and there are going to be 8 different ones, 8 different works of art out on the street, and 4 months later we'll be replacing them with different art. We're going to be on one side of the banner pole. The city will have a banner of their design on the other side of the banner pole, and I'm pretty excited. All of my artists are excited, and hopefully you guys will be too.
Just a question, like, will you like rerun some of the art over time? Or is it just the artist gets 1 4-month shot up there, and just to encourage a lot of artistic creativity?
Each artist will be up there for 4 months, and then it'll be taken down. And at the end of the year, we'll have a big celebration. We'll invite the city, and I'm not sure where we'll have the celebration party, but we're going to be promoting the artists, the sponsors, the city that you guys that are allowing us to do this. And I appreciate this opportunity for us to be able to display art on Main Street and promote our artists, because we have some great artists in this town.
It's a beautiful painting, to say the least. And I think we've all been in communities where they have banner art, and it definitely attributes to the city. And we appreciate
Thank you.
everything that you're doing towards this project.
What's unusual about this is most cities choose a piece of art or an artist, and they're all the same down throughout the city. This is going to be different, because they're all going to be different, 8 works of art. And anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right. I think the rest of my cards I have are for the short-term rentals, and we'll invite those folks and anyone else that would like to speak on the short-term rental or the other public hearing portions. If anyone has anything else they'd like to say?
If I may, I apologize, but I misspoke earlier. You never voted on the special election. The vote that I was looking at was for the special meeting on January 7th, so I think we missed that one.
Did I
Ms.
get
Ramsell was on her A
Did I get a
game.
second, Ray?
Okay, so
Ray, I made the motion. Did we get a second?
You got a second.
we just
But
never
we
voted.
never voted, so I'm sorry.
I thought we did.
Yeah, I'm guessing that Chatham made the motion and then Preble made the substitute motion about the special meeting, so that's probably how we never got around to it.
So
That's on me, folks. So what we need to do we need to restate the motion and the second?
Let's go ahead and restate it just for the clarity of the record.
And then we'll go back to our regular business.
would you like me to restate it?
Well, we considered the substitute, correct? we voted on the substitute, which was the special meeting. We need to consider the original.
Ray, did we vote on the special meeting?
Voted on the
At 5:30.
special meeting,
We
right?
voted on a special meeting for electing the interim. It has nothing to do with the special election.
I move that the city council, are we out of order? Obviously we are.
Let's let the mayor call this item back up, and then really what we should do is we need a motion to call this back up, and then after we get a motion, then we can.
I move to bring back the special election resolution 18-48.
I have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Ray, if you'll clear my board, appreciate it. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Votes unanimous, so moved. So now we go back.
I move that the city council adopts resolution 18-48 authorizing the city of Destin special election pursuant to section 3.09C2 of the Destin City Charter to fill the vacancy created by the resignation of council member Tuffy Dixon to be held on March 12, 2019.
I have a motion. Thank you.
Second.
And I have a second. Mr. Warler. Any further discussion? Seeing none. The vote's unanimous. So moved. And I fumbled the ball on that one. I apologize. All right, we're go back to our public comments on agenda items that are not public hearings. Any other matters not on the agenda? Does anyone else who did not fill out a blue or yellow card would like to speak on any item that is not for public hearing, which is coming up after city's manager report? Seeing none, we are at the end of this particular portion of our agenda. Up next is our city manager report. So take it away, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item A is with regards to the crosstown connector and just ensuring that staff has the correct direction that staff would like them to go on this matter. During the last council meeting, 2 members of council expressed their desire for us to have a discussion, just making sure that it was the will of the council to move forward or not to move forward with this item, and that's what's before you tonight.
We'll just open it up. Comment for the council. Mr. Marler.
Thank you, Mayor. When the initial idea for the cross-county connector was brought before the council, I was on the council at that time. The main reason for the cross-county connector is not to take the main traffic off of Highway 98, but to take the local traffic off of Highway 98 so that people can get, the local people can get to their homes inside Destin. We had not determined at the time where we were going to go once we got to Azalea, but it was never designed to stop at Benning. It was always designed to cross through Benning and go through Azalea and then go to Stallman. That was the entire principle of it. We've had several discussions over that. We purchased a lot of land. Particularly, we spent $4.7 million to buy a former RV park, plus some other two small properties next to that. And with that said, try to answer the other gentleman's question. It's not designed to stop at Benning Drive. It's designed to go to Azalea. Azalea has more right-of-way that we can bring it into that. Once we got to that point of Azalea and Stallman, then possibly we can figure out a plan from there to enhance Stallman to take care of some of the traffic that does not use it to go through. But in order, and the current traffic problem is not due to people just using it, it's because Highway 98 is being torn up to be 6-lane to Airport Road. So a lot of the traffic that's currently on Commons Drive is trying to avoid driving down Highway 98 under the circumstances because to me, it's very dangerous. I even use the back streets because I don't like driving that portion of Highway 98 until they get it fixed. So my personal opinion is that we need to continue with the cross-county connector. I know there's some members of council who don't think we need it, but you will find out in later times how it is needed. I will go back to when they said that the Mid-Bay Bridge was a road to nowhere, but then Hurricane Opal came and that changed the whole ball of wax for that. So I'm in support of continuing the cross-county connector.
Anyone else like to make any comments? Because I think what go ahead, Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. So here's my concern. I already used the Commons Drive, Legion, cut around, and going through. I've never been caught in a traffic jam back there except after the parade, when that's the only way anybody can go. So really, to me, we're making this connector that's, I don't know, connecting to what, because we already have a way to connect through. It's just a couple turns instead of a roundabout here and there. And like we heard earlier from Mr. Reddington, I believe his name was, is then what? Then what? We get people shooting through there, and then all of a sudden they're out in the middle of neighborhoods, and what are we going to do with them then? And my other concern is I've sat on this council now almost 5 years, and I have not gotten any additional plans, any additional information. And we sat and had this meeting, last meeting or a couple meetings before, and people are talking about it emptying out down at Calhoun or Stallman, and I had never even heard that before. Now, of course, clearly, when you look at the imagery, you can see that if you get on Azalea or Mountain, you're going to end up somewhere. But to me, it seems like people are almost looking at making this Azalea and Mountain into higher capacity type zone, which is going to literally pull traffic in there in residential areas for some of that area back there. So then I go back to the whole point that I have no problem driving through there right now. Never been stuck. So, you know, it's a concern to me that we're spending so much time and effort on a project that doesn't seem fully vetted even to this day. And, you know, it's interesting because many of you know I've been working the high school effort as well, and I've had multiple people call me and say, there you go, there's a 5-acre piece of land. And I thought, oh yeah, if I bring this up, it's going to be like Preble in the high school, Preble in the high school. But the more I thought about it, the more I was like, holy cow, they make a great point. That's beach. The elementary school's already up the road. It's a perfect size piece. There's a school zone already there. So really, it's central. You don't have to worry about kids, you know, getting run over or how are they going to get to school. So it seemed to make a whole lot of sense to me. And so I'm just throwing that idea out at you as one that literally has come from other people, but now I'm kind of hooked into that same idea too. If we can't utilize it for a connector, which essentially we already have, maybe we consider utilizing it for something that could really help this community significantly.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, you know, we've discussed this with FDOT or Atkins 2 or 3 times since I've been on council. We've had, I've sat in this room twice when we took public comment, not during a meeting, but they held public workshops. So we voted to progress this unanimously 2 or 3 times. I don't have the minutes, and I can't, but I do know I've sat through meetings, and we voted to. I know we voted twice, and they've both been unanimous. And I don't mind changing my position on something, but I agree with a lot of what you said, Preble. But you know, I would like to know what new information, because a year and a half ago when we had that meeting and we voted 7-0 to pass it, I mean, we all knew that Legion Drive wasn't particularly backed up, you know, so we knew all the information we're talking about tonight then. So what's changed? Am I crazy about the project? You know, it's not particularly, but, and another thing, the residents on Sandalwood, you know, we're doing a big disservice to them. And I know a couple of them, and for the past 3 or 4 years, they've been in limbo over whether or not their houses are going to be condemned, whether we're going to take them from eminent domain. And so we, as a council, need to come up with a direction. And since no new information has been brought to me in the past 2 years regarding this road. It's the same thing I looked at 2 years ago when I voted for it. I'm not going to change my vote now. I'm not crazy about the project, but we're getting funding for it. So if anybody has new information they'd like to bring, I'd welcome it. And I've got a feeling that, you know, that there are people on this council that are trying to kill it, and I'd like to know why, because I feel like I'm in the dark about it, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. There's never been a 7-0 unanimous vote on this project because I have never supported it.
I stand corrected.
Yep. I have never supported it, so there's never been unanimous votes on it because it's a project going to the bridge. There's no way out. It's going to bottleneck. There's a lot of people who don't like it. The road on Legion, when you four-lane that, it's going to put that road probably 30 feet in front of everybody's front door going down Legion. And Sandalwood's going to be the same way. I don't know why we've talked about this project for several years, and there's still a lot of people coming out as of today that still have questions about it. Didn't know where it was going or anything else. And I'd like to know that, I mean, on this packet that I've got here, it says the Destin Crosstown Connector Roadway Project. Doesn't say anything about roadway for locals only. And I'd like to know if DOT is fully aware that this has nothing to do with relieving traffic off of 98 for public to use it. It's strictly for local traffic only. If they're aware of that or not. I mean, the people, you keep hearing that, you know, some of us over here on the council want to kill it. Well, I'm sure they're talking about me. I don't necessarily want to kill it. I just want more answers.
Rodney, your votes always indicated you wanted to kill it. I was speaking about more than just you, but I do remember you voting against it. But if y'all want to kill it, maybe you have a majority. Put it up.
No, I mean,
but either way, we need resolution on this thing. I don't want to keep relitigating this every other meeting. You know, we've talked about this a lot. No new information's come about. If a council member wants to bring up new information, I'll reconsider my vote. Otherwise, I'm voting to progress it. And if you think there's going to be a majority to kill it, let's kill it. But I don't want to hire another attorney under, you know, our next item's going to be hiring an attorney for a condemnation of property. Why are we going to do that if we don't want to proceed with the project? You know, so if whatever, that's my sin. If we want to kill it, let's kill it. I'm not going to vote for it unless y'all tell me why people on this council have changed their minds. You know, and we're doing a disservice to the people of Destin, to FDOT, to all the people that are going to give us money if we change our mind a year and a half later based on nothing, on no new information except we don't feel like it now. It's ridiculous.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Oberdeer.
Mayor, I wasn't finished. I was rudely interrupted by Mr. Morgan.
Okay.
I'm getting tired of it. I've had enough. I'm just simply stating how I feel like everybody else up here. It doesn't mean I want to kill the project or anything else. I'm just telling you how I feel. Just like everybody else has the opportunity to do the same. And I'm trying to explain why I have questions about this project. We keep buying land, and I just like to know how it's going to end up leading onto the bridge. Nobody knows. Nobody can give us a straight answer. It's just going to bottleneck. I just like, instead of spending more money and keeping everybody in limbo, find out how this project is really going to end up getting onto the bridge. I don't know, there's too many answers. The attorney has too many answers. I mean, too many questions about it. There's too many red flags coming up, and I just don't want to keep spending millions of taxpayers' dollars on a project that we're hoping will wind up being, I don't know, something we can get up on the bridge with. It's just going to bottleneck, and I don't know. There's too many red flags, too many questions to just keep pushing it forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braden. Mr. Oberdeer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so my understanding of this, and maybe I mean, obviously I came into this late because this thing has been on the table before I ever even moved to Destin. I moved here in 2011, and they were talking about it already, and plans had already been made to do this, and we've moved steadily ahead on doing this. And my understanding of Crosstown Connector was not that it was to be another substitute for 98, although it was going to get some traffic off of 98, but it was more of a local initiative to get the people that live in Destin to be able to get them from one side of town to the other side of town, and to get them into their neighborhoods and their houses and everything else. And so it's not to try to alleviate necessarily all the congestion on 98, because that's not going to be done with this Crosstown Connector. I think we all know that. The problems that we've got on 98 are much bigger than anything this Crosstown Connector is going to solve, but that's not what I thought that it was ever for. So I would still be in favor of it, because I think it's going to be able to provide another route for people to be able to drive through Destin to get into the neighborhoods in Destin. However, once it gets down to Stallman, I mean, there is still an initiative, and FDOT has still got it on their radar to come in and do an engineering analysis or a traffic study or whatever they have to do to figure out how to make that intersection down there on Stallman and 98, where it all empties out onto 98 by the Emerald Grand there, how to clean that intersection up and make it more traffic friendly and make it easier for people to get through there. So eventually, when you come down through the Crosstown Connector and you come down and you go all the way to Stallman and all the way down, and then when you come down Stallman, eventually you will be able to get back out into 98 and go across the bridge if that's what you want to do. Or if you're coming across the bridge from Fort Walton and you want to come and get on the Crosstown Connector and go to your properties or to your residences or somewhere else in town here, you're going to be able to use that Crosstown Connector for that. And that's what my understanding of it was. Now, maybe I had the wrong impression of this, or maybe I was told wrong about what it was for, but that's what I understood it to be for, and I still think it's going to be a good thing to do. And we're getting money from the state, we're getting money from the county, everybody's bought into this. We've had public hearings, people have sat here and told us they thought it was a good thing, and that's why we voted the way we did. So I think it's still a good idea, and I'll continue to vote for it.
Mr. Marler.
Thank you, Skip. You're pretty much on the money. And the other two things is I need to talk to the people in West Legion and the people on the residential area of Mountain Drive, because they're the ones I've talked to that want the Crosstown Connector, so they're not in their neighborhoods. When you get on Legion to Beach, you either turn left or right and you go through the other two neighborhoods. And Mr. Overdeer is right. The whole point was to get local traffic off the highway and get them safely to their homes. It was never designed to be a secondary route for the main highway to go through. It's always been planned that way. And originally, as I said, we didn't think past Stallman at the time because, again, it was supposed to be local to get the local traffic so they could get to their homes. And I use it all the time. And unfortunately, right now, because of the highway construction from Airport Road to through the county and through this county and through Walton County, yes, the road out here is being used a lot more. But that will cease. That will take a little bit less after the 6 lane is done, and the traffic will move. So I'm still in favor of it because we have 2 residential sections for sure that it takes the traffic out of, which makes it safer to me right there off the bat.
Well, the staff's asking for direction because we have all these things pending, including this contract with the company that presented this 90% plan submittal in May of 2017, which was shortly thereafter. There was actually a workshop specifically done on that. So they're asking for direction. I see that Ms. Ramswell has another comment. Go ahead, ma'am.
Well, it's actually a question for my fellow council and I guess really anybody, but if the goal is to get the locals to have a back way to go through, I mean, do any of you guys sit in traffic on 98 rather than cutting up and through the neighborhoods already? And that's sort of my point. I mean, we're already using it as a connector. It's just we're using Seaview or going up to Kelly. So we're going this way rather than now using eminent domain and cutting completely through and having other people now on a 2-lane highway going through a neighborhood. So I go back to the original point, which was it's supposed to be a connector, and now y'all are saying it's to get locals off 98. I don't know that many locals that would prefer sitting in 98 rather than cutting through there. I mean, please, please, I want you to speak up. I want to hear your thoughts.
The majority of the traffic, the majority of the area is not residential, except when you get to Beach Drive, where you have the two sections of residential areas on Mountain Drive and on Legion Drive. You do have the one section of Legion Drive, but we enhanced that Legion Drive to make that wider to begin with, to take care of that, because you're coming off of Commons Drive, Airport Road, which is mostly commercial. Most of the residential is off of that road. And so you have two sections of residential areas that's being impacted by our traffic because we're taking those back streets. And it's also hurting the infrastructure of the roads themselves. There's sections of Legion and there's sections of Mountain Drive in the residential areas that already need to be repaired.
I think you just made my point.
Well, I'm making your point, but at the same time, the residents don't want it in their residential area. They would prefer to have a straighter shot without having to go through a bunch of residential areas. So the cross-country connector takes care of that because you're only minimally impacting one section of Legion Drive and not another section of Legion Drive and Airport Road.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. I hear your concerns, probably, but we have, in the past year, we've purchased 2 or 3 properties on this crosstown connector, and so on Sandalwood. Yeah, and so I'm not just saying May 2017 we approved this 6-1, but we've continued to purchase these properties within the past 12 months. As recent, I mean, I feel like we just purchased property a couple months ago. So why all of a sudden? I mean, we are knee deep in it. So why the change in heart? That's all I'm asking for. Because to say that, you know, all of these arguments were available back in May 2017 that we don't think, you know, it's just frustrating. But
no, I get it.
But you're not going to find a consensus from us because I think we have a council member absent who has also publicly voiced concerns about the crosstown connector. So it's split. I don't know what to tell you.
You know, I think we've all sort of experienced that learning curve, and you probably are already experiencing it a little, but when you first get up here and you start learning things, it's kind of overwhelming and you just have a peripheral understanding. As the years go by and you learn more and you hear more, it's amazing how things suddenly become clear. And I think in the case of this, I thought it was pretty much a done deal when I was put on council. I did. I thought, oh, okay, the connector, I've heard about it for years, it's a done deal. But the longer I've sat up here, and then we find out that the TDC is willing to fund, which is a phenomenal gift, but then I'm suddenly, well, wait, it's not funded, it's not a done deal, and we still have options, particularly since a lot of the public has reached out and voiced concerns as well. So that's sort of where I'm coming from, is a realization that we can change our mind if it may not be the right thing. And it's a learning process for sure.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ranswell. Rodney, you get one more stab at it.
Thank you, buddy. Lance, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what I've been told in the past is the ultimate goal is to the crosstown connectors coming down Airport Road, which is 4-laned. It's going to cross Main Street. We're buying up enough property to 4-lane Legion to Beach. We're going to 4-lane this piece of property right here that cuts through the old campground, and then 4-lane Azalea up to the old Nighttown property. Is that not the ultimate goal?
I'll tell you my understanding of it. And I've been around 15 years. I've seen it from a distance, not up close. But the Legion Drive, my understanding is no, it's not intended to go 4-lane. I don't know that there's enough right-of-way left there to do that. When you go to the campground property, however, it is designed to be 2-lane but expandable to 4 lanes. And likewise with Azalea. Azalea is currently 2 lanes, but it does have the right-of-way to expand to 4 lanes if we wanted to do that in the future.
4 lanes again back on this piece of property, and then 4 lanes on down Azalea, and then cut back down to 2 lanes somewhere in that area. Okay, thanks.
All right.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to give you all a little history lesson, seeing how we're struggling here. March 6, 2017 Daily News article. It talked about the overall connection was planned back in the late 1990s to relieve traffic from US 98 that carries about 58,000 vehicles per day. The connector's final section could be completed by 2022. And we obviously want to get it done a lot faster than that, Dave Campbell said. Traffic's been one of the biggest topics in town since the mid-1990s. Mayor Scott Fisher agreed. You'll find the longer-term residents will do anything to avoid 98, he said, and I've heard from some people who claim they never get on 98. Once completed, the connector will stretch between Danny Werfel Way to the east and Stallman Avenue to the west. The last part of the project, the 97% plan, is a half-a-mile-long section between Benning and Beach Drive, passing through the area of Anna Street, Sandalwood Court, and Sandalwood Drive. Completing this part of the connector will require the removal of 9 townhomes. Since 1990s, over 20 years, we've spent close to $18 million. And the Crosstown Connector, not up Crosstown Bypass, has $10 million in reserve right now committed to pay for the rest of the construction for that last half a mile that everybody's looking at. That will improve traffic flow, because right now where you see that roundabout in the right-hand corner, that's a 3-way stop. In Legion Drive, that neighborhood is just down the road, and people have to stop and wait to get out there, not counting the school traffic. That's a roundabout. So get people from Benning Drive over to Beach, or from Beach to Benning, where there'll be another roundabout tied into Azalea. It's all about traffic flow. And so, finishing this connector that we spent so much capital on, not just financially, but energy and time, effort, passion, it's not going to hurt the traffic flow for any of us to get to our house, or to get from our house to the store, or from the store back to our homes. So, I hear the discussion about, well, it doesn't seem like it does anything. Well, I haven't heard anybody offer another solution that's better than the one that we have. So, unless this council is willing to entertain a motion to kill the 97% plan, turn its back on $10 million to finish the project with no solution at all, then if you want to wear that, let's just get right on out and do it. And then we'll let the electorate decide at the next election whether that was a good idea or not. Otherwise, because of the timing and the need for better traffic flow in our community, I think it's a no-brainer. And I'm just one guy. Apparently the former mayor and mayors before him and what, 20-some years of city councils that have been working to do this and finish this project, have they all been wrong? So that's my challenge to this council. If you guys want to kill this thing, let's give our staff a break and our attorneys a break and quit stalling and wishy-washing our ways around, or let's press on, pass this resolution to finish this contract, this $87,000, make a commitment to our community as a council, and let's just get the job done. So unless somebody wants to make a motion to entertain to kill this thing, then I think that we need to move forward and get the project done. That's all I have to say. Does anybody want? I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make a motion to continue it when we have all of our council members present.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Any discussion?
What does that do with staff? Lance, is that going to hurt staff's position? Wait till
His
January?
report is he's requesting a motion to. We'll finish your thing next.
So I'm just trying to figure out where we're at, where the staff's going to be at if we continue this another couple of weeks.
Well, apparently this motion is just to refute what I just said. So let's just deal with that one at a time. I'm not scared. We have a motion. Do I have a second to that motion? Okay, we have a second. Rodney, you're...
Did you say this is 97% complete?
The plan that was submitted in May of 2017 was the 90% plan.
Thank you.
It is not 97% complete or even 90% complete because it won't be until we get to this portion accomplished. Any further discussion to the motion in the second?
Take the motion again to continue it.
You want to entertain this?
What's the motion, Trevor?
To continue it till another meeting when we have full council.
Just to clarify, do you want to go ahead and just continue it to, is your motion to continue it to January 7th?
Sure, absolutely.
And what I want to be clear too is this in relationship to crosstown connector direction and not addressing this
The condemnation attorney?
the attorney for condemnation property.
I'll let Ms. Ramswell speak on what her motion is.
Well, I would say it would depend on the outcome of what we're voting on now. I mean, certainly I would classify that condemnation of property issue that emerged as new info.
No, it's not, because we've been talking about condemnation of these properties. In that article I quoted...
That was eminent domain.
No.
There are some issues that have come up on the inverse condemnation front recently to our attention.
Correct, and you brought that up. That's why we were going to hire a specialist, and that's why the city attorney was wanting direction, because in that article that was in March 6th of 2017, they talked about Destin officials have already spent $4.8 million on right-of-way acquisition for the last part of the connector project and $730,000 for Atkins to perform a project development environmental study, and we have spent $538,000. No, we have set aside $538,000 in city's money for remaining property acquisition. So the acquisition has been on the table for quite some time.
That's different than what has emerged.
It's true that legal was not engaged to consider the potential inverse condemnation issues, and those issues did not come to our attention until right before the last meeting. And that is what this attorney who's on the agenda, Bruce Humphrey, is. We're asking you to hire him to address that, but we'll get to that shortly.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second. Seeing no further discussion. Nays have it. 3-2. Motion fails. So, do you want, city manager, do you want specific direction at this particular time? Do you want that to fall in the realm of hiring this attorney?
Well, I just want to be a responsible steward of the money that we could spend on this next item. So I would like some direction to know if I should go ahead and spend that money. I don't want to waste money that we're not going to use the product for.
Do you have a recommended motion then?
It's the council's will, so they can tell me to move forward with the next item, which I'd be happy to, or they can ask me to wait on the next item, which I'd be happy to do that too.
Well, we pretty much know which way the vote would go, the opposite direction, so.
Once we get to the condemnation issue, I do have a recommended motion that I will read to y'all, but I'm not sure if we're off.
We just press forward. We don't need a motion.
I'm not sure if we're still on 4A or not.
We are, but I'm fixing to end it. Okay? I think everybody got to share their piece. Let's go to 4B, Attorney for Condemnation of Property Evaluation, which was an issue that was brought up at the last meeting by our attorneys and certain members of the council. Let's go ahead, Lance.
So Mr. Steve Bowman is here to give a report on this.
Thank you, Lance. Yes, at the direction of the council from the last meeting, myself and Kyle spoke to attorney Bruce Humphrey out of Jacksonville. He's actually a kid who grew up locally here, but he practices in Jacksonville. I call him a kid. He's not a kid anymore. But he's well known throughout the state as a condemnation, eminent domain expert. I don't think we could do any better than hiring him. He has all kinds of experience. We did briefly engage him regarding very basic facts that we're looking at. Really, what the issue that was identified by Mr. Burns is if we purchase these sandalwood units, does that affect the other units to the extent that they have some sort of inverse condemnation claim then against the city? So what he would be tasked with would be to advise the city as to its potential liability in those situations. It's not so much as to advise the city regarding condemning or taking property by eminent domain. It's really to advise regarding the potential liabilities that could flow from taking a portion of the sandalwood units, and then how that affects the other common elements and other living units within that subdivision. And there's a myriad of things that would have to be considered. Mr. Humphrey's highly recommended. He's been used. We've, in our law firm, have worked with him before in condemnation matters. Again, a statewide reputation and very well known. I'm sure one question is, what is his rate? Because that's very important. And for a person, attorney of his expertise, he charges $295 per hour, which I think is, again, for his expertise and the complexities of this type of practice, is a very reasonable rate for what he would be asked to do. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Does anyone on the council have any questions about giving Lance the ability to hire this attorney for discussion? Mr. Braden.
I think it'd be a huge waste of money myself. I guess, like the mayor just basically stated, we're fixing to build this crosstown connector one way or the other. So why do we need to spend money on attorneys to tell us if we're going to be in lawsuits or not?
One thing is that I think it would allow us to be proactive in how we approach the other unit owners. First off, is it a problem? We don't know that. So we need to identify, is it in fact a problem and an issue that we would have to deal with? And then the council can make its decision. Do you want to be proactive and approach these other owners with some solution to try to avoid litigation? Or, what are the likelihoods of there being litigation and prevailing in that litigation? So without the expertise of Mr. Humphrey or some other attorney versed in this type of practice, we can't provide those answers to you.
Yeah, and that's why we have a land use attorney, and we employ your services on a lot of these other issues. We rely on you to give us, to the best of your ability, factual recommendations based on Florida statute and law. And this guy could do the same thing. He could also help us mitigate risk by how we do it as well. So yes. I see the value in that. Me personally, I thought it was just another delay tactic to prevent the crosstown connector from being done. But after thought about it, this is what you call hedging your bets.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I do have a recommended motion if somebody on the council wants to make it. It'd be a motion to direct the city manager to take the steps necessary to hire the law firm Birchfield and Humphrey, PA, to perform a review of all condemnation-related issues for the crosstown connector.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. I have it. So moved. City Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We just have an update and a discussion on the Sterling Shores Association that Ms. Kimberly Kopp is going to lead for us.
Okay, per the prior directive of the City Council, we sent correspondence to the Sterling Shores Owners Association's General Counsel demanding that the association restore public access to the beach as we discussed at prior meetings. Subsequently, the association hired special counsel to respond on this issue, which response we received a couple of hours before tonight's meeting. So at this time, and after talking with the city manager and myself are requesting to bring this issue back at a future meeting once council and ourselves have had a chance to review the response, and at that point we'll provide council with options for moving forward.
Including if we need to a executive session to discuss legal action or just to publicly debate it?
It would be public unless there was actual pending litigation.
This litigation, just to clarify, is not, there's been no litigation filed. We're in the preliminary stages.
Go ahead.
No, that's fine.
You're just going to keep pressing on, doing what we're doing.
We will do that.
Making sure that it's an 8-foot wide public access and not 5 foot, right?
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item D is the Destin Fishing Fleet update with regards to the Burt J. Harris Act.
On September 4th, the City of Destin received correspondence from the law firm of Hopping Green and Sams, attorney for the Destin Fishing Fleet. This correspondence was immediately forwarded to the City Council. Via this correspondence, the fleet has alleged that the city has inordinately burdened its property by passing a series of comprehensive plan amendments. They provided an appraisal as required by the statute. All of that information is included in your packet. At this point, the city is still within the 150-day time period where the city can consider making a settlement offer to the plaintiff. And the recommended motion at this time, although we have not discussed whether there is a vested right or an existing right on the property, at this point the recommended motion is to move to direct the city manager and the city attorneys to obtain a bona fide valid appraisal of the subject property from a state certified real estate appraiser and to bring the appraisal back to the city council for consideration in evaluating settlement at a future meeting.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a second. Discussion? Go ahead, Ms. Ramswell.
Thanks. I actually have a question for our attorneys. Is there some provision in the Burt Harris Act that actually allows us to collect attorney's fees in the event we...
Yeah, and that is if the city were to make a settlement offer to the fleet and the fleet were to reject that offer and the city was to later prevail in the lawsuit, the fleet could be responsible for the city's legal fees and costs.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a second to get an appraisal or to direct city manager to get the appraisal, which is really our first responsibility under Burt Harris as a city. That's our first response is to get an appraisal, correct?
It's one of your options, yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and take it to vote then. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Go ahead, Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item E is an update on the Public Beach Initiative. Council had asked staff to secure individuals that can complete appraisals for us for the 7 properties discussed at the last meeting. Since that time, we have reached out to some area appraisals and are just asking for confirmation that council wants us to proceed with getting the appraisals completed on those properties. And I apologize for bringing this to you, seeming that you gave instructions at the last meeting, but my current contract requires me to get your permission to enter into a new contract.
And we heard testimony from Mr. Wade that he's offering his property, and I think the initial motion we had was to get evaluation or an assessment, property assessment on 7 properties, and now adding his would require a motion to do all 8 properties, including his, so we can come back and make our final decision on what properties that we'd like to write grants for. So basically, what you'd like out of us, Lance, would be a motion to approve either appraisals for 7 properties or 8, correct?
That's correct. And Mr. Warren has done this work for us and has some additional information he can provide to the council.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lance. On page 6 of the handout that you are provided for the Public Beach Initiative, there are 2 possible actions tonight. One is to go forward with the appraisals as identified last meeting for 7 properties, or we can include the additional property, which is 2970 Scenic Highway 98. So this item is for your consideration.
Mayor, I'll entertain a motion to accept and add the number 8 one to the list and have all 8 appraised.
Second.
So I got a motion, a second. Ray, could you clear my machine? I got it showing voting here. Sorry about that.
Mayor, I'm going to have to abstain. I've got family members that own one of the properties in question.
Okay. You fill out Form 8. I am presently taking my ethics training class. I haven't abstained, so I didn't know. It has to be done next 15 days. But fortunately, Ray's all over it. So, all right, we got a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none?
I had a question, Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, Rodney. I didn't push the button.
Is this for hiring Phil or Humphrey?
It is for, if you look at the motion itself, it says to accept the proposal from Phil Houston Appraisal Service.
Does somebody do you want to make the recommended motion? Would that clarify things, Kyron?
The recommended motion is on page 6, and it says possible actions. There's an A and a B, and from what I heard, you wanted to include the 8 property.
I'll reword it to the recommended motion. I move to add the property address at 2970 Scenic Highway 98 to approve list of parcels to be appraised for appraisal services and accept the proposal from Phil Harris Appraisal Service for $10,000 and fund this service with a City Council contingency account 0151110.534000.
Okay, so
Second stand.
second stands. All right.
And for clarification, if I may,
Phil
it is Phil
Houston.
Houston. Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Ayes have it, unanimous. That wrap up your report? Well, before we get into item number 5, public hearings, let's take a 5-minute break and let everybody stretch their legs and do whatever you humans do. make their way back to their seats, I'd appreciate it. Everybody take their seats. We appreciate it. We'll get back to business. We got lots of stuff. Is Lance, is the 5A still on the document? Yes, sir. All right. We'll take these, we're in the public hearing portion of our meeting now, and we're going to take each item one at a time. We got 5 things to do. This is part of the public hearing where we hear from our city attorney the most. He gets the privilege of reading the ordinance. Under 5A.
We have an entity that is requesting a simple deviation. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kopp now.
Yes, and this is an item that's been to council a couple of times before, but was continued both times. The applicant is here tonight. He's requesting clarifying language in a recorded parking agreement with the city to authorize the applicant to prohibit overnight parking and signage for same and authorize towing. It would not prohibit parking during the day. And the recommended motion here is going to be that the council accept the changes, but before we ask for a decision, we'd like to hear from the applicant.
And members of the public can speak as well after his comments.
After the applicant, they sure can.
And here he is.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Steve Hall. My firm is Hall & Runnels. Here representing SRG Properties, the owner of the back porch, among other properties. And we have this simple little clarification in front of you tonight. I think the staff report covers the issue very well. It's just a little problem that's gathered steam as perhaps short-term rentals generate more and more cars and have fewer and fewer places to park. We just want to be able to tow vehicles who are parking overnight or staying over a period of time in the parking lot that don't have anything to do with our restaurant and don't have anything to do with the beaches. So we've accomplished that, worked with staff. Thank you very much, staff, for coming up with a good, reasonable amendment to the agreement.
Does anyone on the council have any questions for Mr. Hall? Mr. Braden.
Is there somewhere in here that I've missed that it gives us a time period so we're not towing cars at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, not knowing if they're going to the beach or?
The intention, Mr. Braden, was to be able to run it the same hours as the park nearby, the city park. So it'd be sundown to sun up.
Asking staff, is that in the document?
Basically, you can just, approving the request tonight would not mean the document would be as is. It would just authorize the attorneys to finalize it and sign it.
Does anyone on the council have a recommendation if they don't like the sun up, sundown? Ms. Ramsel.
I'll go ahead and make the recommended motion. I move that the council accept the proposed changes contained in the amended and restated parking agreement with Restaurant Row Redevelopment and authorize the mayor to execute the amended agreement on behalf of the city.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. And before we go into any further discussion, we ask for public input at this particular time. Is anyone in the audience like to specifically address the request of Mr. Hall's folks or the motion that has just been made and seconded? Seeing none, is there any further discussion amongst council members? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote on that motion in second. The vote is unanimous. So moved. Thank you, Mr. Hall. All right. Next up, take it away.
All right, we have for first reading ordinance number 18-29-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida relating to occupancy limits for short-term rentals, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for the amendment of Code of Ordinances Article 6, registration of short-term rentals, amending Section 13-108, local responsible party required, amending Section 13-114, posting of signage, creating Section 13-117, occupancy limits, creating Section 13-118, exemption for pre-existing agreements, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. And this is a public hearing, and I'm going to turn over to Ms. Kopp now.
Ms. Kopp.
Thank you. So the ordinance 1829CC, you'll see that there are two versions in the agenda packet. That is per council's directive at the last city council meeting. The ordinances are identical except that the first ordinance marked Exhibit A counts occupancy by number of bedrooms. It's currently at 2 persons for each bedroom plus 2 additional people. And it has a maximum total capacity of 24 per short-term rental. The Exhibit B has the 1 person per 250 square feet, and it also has a maximum occupancy as currently proposed at 24.
Kim, you and I discussed after, because I was the one that led the initiative on the per square footage. Should I at this time make a statement about that, or should we let the public comment period take place first?
I would suggest letting the public comment on it only because they're both in here for your consideration, and I don't know how the entire council feels, but at any point, if you all choose one over the other, you can make that decision.
I'll make my disclaimer at that point. We'll let the public speak first.
Okay.
Is there anything else from either one of our attorneys?
The only other thing I would say is that they are not exactly the same as proposed at the previous meeting. I've made changes, so if anyone has questions, I added some grandfathering language. If anyone has questions, just let me know.
Okay, and before we take any motions or seconds, we'll hear from the public first, and then we'll start legislative action after that, and we can cover both of those items at that time.
Sir.
All right, I've got some blue cards for people that have requested to speak. After these blue cards are done, I'll also look out amongst you, and if anyone wants to raise their hand, we will take you one by one until either y'all run out the door or no more hands are raised. First up will be Matthew Beta, I think. Rada? Matthew? Sorry if I butchered your name. I couldn't really read it very well. Well, you're going to state your name anyways, right?
Matthew Reich, 416 Spanish Moss Trail, Destin, Florida. I wanted to share with you guys a little bit about my experience. I got to live my dream come true. I get to live and work in Destin, Florida. It was my dream since my parents brought us to Destin, Florida when I was in high school for the first time ever, and I just absolutely fell in love with the beautiful white sand beaches. And coming from Virginia Beach, I don't know if you've ever been there, but the water here is quite a bit different. And I immediately fell in love with it, and I've been so proud for the last 12 years to get to live and work and own and manage and run my own vacation rentals right here in Crystal Beach in Destin, Florida. It's truly been the dream of a lifetime. I had a couple other proposals, alternative, instead of just decimating the entire vacation rental industry in our area and eliminating all of our revenue, was just a couple ideas to go over, and I just wanted to bounce them off of everybody. But I know parking has been an issue. Obviously, neighborhoods are being overused. A simple decal or a sign, and one thing that I noticed in all the listings across the board is nobody ever seems to have how many parking spaces they have. Everybody has how many guests they can hold, how many guests they can sleep. I've even seen listings with how many people can get in a pool. But never have I ever seen, oh yeah, the house has 15 bedrooms, but it only has parking for 3 sedans. Whereas a lot of us have homes that we've built, that we've developed, that we've purchased, that we've owned, that maybe have 5, 6, 7 bedrooms, but parking for 8 or 10 vehicles. So obviously having that number and then regulating how many vehicles are going to be able to stay at that property. If you got a party of 20 coming in, are you having 20 different cars? Is everybody driving separately? Probably not. So this way your guests are also getting a better idea of how many vehicles they can sleep. Trash valet service, Waste Management has already offered to do trash valet service. The valet service is when you don't have all your trash cans lined up at the street. They actually come onto the property and take the trash out of you take the bin, empty the bin in the truck, and then put the trash can back away. It's extremely reasonable. It's very cost effective. And if that were something that you guys ever wanted to take a look at, Waste Management's more than happy to go ahead and offer that year round. Right now it's only offered during the summer, and it did not have a big following at all. Last year we were one of the only companies that used it. It's a wonderful service. They come by on Saturdays, they take the trash out, valet style, so there's not a whole bunch of cans out by the street. Obviously trash is a major concern. This is something that's been kind of out there for a little while now, but it doesn't really seem like it's being utilized or leveraged. Occupancy limitations. Obviously, I think you're going to hear this a million times tonight. It's just simply not going to work. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to be efficient. You're going to lower the quality of renters. You're going to lower the amount of revenue we bring in, and you're going to have more issues with a lower class of individuals that are coming to stay in Destin on a regular basis. The only people that are actually going to be punished here, your unregistered, unlicensed vacation rentals. You think that they're all of a sudden going to comply because you passed this new legislation? Probably not.
You're going to have to wrap it up, Matt, if you could, in 15 seconds. I'm
done. We're going to force prices down, attract the lowest quality of renters possible. We're compounding our problem, and not to mention, how are we going to enforce to make sure that these guests didn't just lie and tell us how many guests were staying at the house and really have a lot more.
Thank you, Matt. Next up, Paul Sego. Sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Paul Sego. I'm with Expedia Group. HomeAway and VRBO are part of our family of brands. And so I just wanted to come and thank you for the process that the city went through to get us to where we are today. Not going to talk about individual parts of the ordinance. There will be plenty of speakers that will come do that. But I just wanted to thank you for being deliberate. You really have thoroughly looked at this from all sides, taken input from all the stakeholders. And that is something that is really refreshing when it comes to ordinances like this. This is a difficult ordinance. Everyone's ox will get gored a little bit at some point in this ordinance. And you will hear folks that come to the lectern tonight and tell you it goes too far. And you will have people that come to the lectern tonight and tell you it doesn't go far enough. But I just want to say thank you and for your openness, for your deliberation on this. You really, as I mentioned, took all sides. Something I wish other municipalities would do. So I just wanted to thank you for that process. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Up next, Jason Sprinkle.
Mayor, Councilman, appreciate you guys having us tonight and hearing more on this issue. I come wearing 3 hats tonight. First, 437 Captain Circle. Sorry about that. First, as a owner of 360 Blue, vacation property that manages just over 570 homes. A large number of them are in Walton County, but certainly a large number in Destin as well. They tend to be on the higher end and oftentimes have some of the larger houses in town. Secondly, I sat on the task force that a lot of you guys attended and spent an awful lot of time and energy. I was listening to the process. Mayor, as you were talking about the effort that went into the connector, and I know it's only been a year we've been involved in this, but it sure seems like we put a lot of effort with an awful lot of people into that task force. And then lastly, as the CEO of a company called Key Data, where we collect, and it's only a year old, but we collect vacation rental data for companies around the world that we then sell to larger entities on the macro level. And so one of the things we have that I've given a copy to everybody on council is a presentation that I won't go over, but on some of the data on how vacation rental density and specifically on how occupancy is laid out in Destin. 3 points I want to make. First, that time, energy, and effort that we put into the task force resulted in an awful lot of compromises. We brought all the vacation rental manager owners together that would come together. We'd heard from everybody in town that was against vacation rentals as a whole and everybody in between. And we put a lot of effort into putting some proposals in front of you guys that would deeply impact how trash and noise and parking are implemented. My main point tonight is I think those need to be given a chance to work. I think you've got the teeth in front of you. You've got a whole new energy behind you to get them enforced. We're awakened or awoke, as they say, and I really would like to see those, given the time that we put into it, given a fair chance to work. If you do move forward with something which I think is premature, I think it's critical that you look at the data. It's a lot of data there, so I won't go over all the points with you, but a couple of quick points. One, the 1 plus 250 would impact 75% of the homes in Destin. I just think it's an untenable option. The 2 plus 2 would impact 40% of the homes in Destin that are vacation rentals. The 2 plus 4, which is not on the table, would drop that down to 10%. So you'd go from 40% to 10%. So I think 2 plus 2, if you go that direction with occupancy limitations, which are still unwarranted, is too broad and too impactful. And then the last thing I want to point you to is at the end of the proposal, there's some great data now that really proves what the impact is. If you drop it from 2 plus 4 to 2 plus 2, or if you take your average home that does 2 plus 4 instead of 2 plus 2, it does almost 10% higher in ADR and revenue. So it makes a difference. It's a provable difference. It has a big impact on the economy. I would implore you to take a look at that. And then lastly, if you do move forward with the draft, Kimberly's been wonderful to work with. I think there's still a lot of open issues in the drafting that the vacation rental companies have questions with, so I'd encourage you to look at those.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, Tim Taylor.
Good evening, council members. Tim Taylor. I reside at 10 Noriego Road. 2 weeks ago, I asked maybe could we hit the pause button. And after hearing the discussion tonight on the crosstown connector, just moving right along, possibly the pause button is not a bad thing, not making a decision. 2 weeks ago, a council member said, well, we have to pass something. We just have to pass something. Out of frustration. Well, no, you don't just have to pass something. And as discussion, as things are left on the table, we see that there's more and more questions. I believe the task force that was put together from information that we've gathered since then, I believe some of the stakeholders that were put on that committee possibly had an agenda that none of us were aware of. Some of those committee members that have been here talking to you and showing you instances that I believe are probably more an exception to the rule and making it look like these homes that are overoccupied are ruining the quality of life. And I've heard this term quality of life so often that I'm not so sure from what we've gathered since some of these people on the committee now want to ban rentals on Holiday Isle. These very same people that have been talking to you have now want a proposal on Holiday Isle where the membership votes to ban rentals. I think quality of life, I hope, is not a code word for people coming here that speak a different language on vacation and people coming here on vacation that are a different color. But the quality of life term, I keep hearing this, and now as we're trying to regulate the vacation rental industry, we're not Carmel, California. They want to regulate. Too many Chinese come into town, dropping cigarettes, walking in people's yards. So their quality of life is a racial thing that's going on in their town. And so I would just hope the council would just pause and keep gathering a little more information on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. All right, that's all the cards I have. I'm going to look out in the audience now. We'll start over here to the right. Does anyone in the audience over here like to speak on this issue? Short-term rental task, or right, Sally. I'll work my way right across the audience, so be patient.
Hi, I'm Sally Maurer. I live on Holiday Isle at 514 Veracruz, and I have a short-term vacation rental home. And I just wanted to basically say the same things that Mr. Taylor already said, but my short-term rental home is I think we need to have rules, and everyone in the short-term rental industry, for the most part, wants to abide by them, but I think they need to be reasonable. My particular home, which I've told you all before, sleeps 18 in beds, and that's king-size beds, queen-size beds, and 2 twin beds. That's no sofa sleepers. And they're not crowded in, they're not bunk beds on top of each other, there's no bunk beds. So according to your rules, the 2 plus 2, I would only be able to advertise for 14 people. It's a 6-bedroom home. And the one for every 250 square feet, again, I would be limited to 14 people instead of 18, which would impact my bottom line as far as revenue and the amount I pay in bed tax. As far as violations on the noise, I would just like to point out that I had a report from Holiday Isle, and there was 4 noise violations in 2017, and there was 4 noise violations in 2018. And 4, to me, in an entire season, does not seem like a large number that it was made out to be in the presentations made to you all. That's just Holiday Isle, not all of Destin. And my house in particular, I've been renting for 12 years. I've never once had the sheriff come to my house. I've never once had a problem with my tenants. And I just think that there's been some misunderstanding on what our real problems are. As I drive through our neighborhood every day during the summer, I don't see the same kind of problems as some people made it out to look like. And thank you very much for your time, and please vote no on the occupancy. Oh, the other point that I just wanted to say on the occupancy, and then we're going to put code enforcement. We're going to spend a lot of money on code enforcement to browse the internet, to be sure people aren't advertising for more than the amount of people. And then how are they going to enforce it? Are they going to go knock on the door at midnight and see how many people are sleeping there? It's just not really reasonable. But I do want to follow rules, and I do want to, make my guests follow rules. And I just don't think occupancy is the appropriate one at this time.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else from this?
Hey, Mayor, may I ask her a question, please?
Sure. Sally, come back up the podium. Go ahead, Rodney.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Yes, sir.
How many vehicles does your home accommodate?
Probably about 12. I have a large driveway. Nobody ever brings that many.
That's amazing.
I tell people 6 to 8, depending on your size, if they're big SUVs or whatever, or some trucks, you might not. But it is a large driveway. And I think we should regulate how many parking spaces, and that can be in the advertising as well.
I got you. Thank you so much.
You don't want parking, And if people do have more vehicles, I just tell them this is the amount you can have at my house. You have to make other arrangements if you need more than that.
Well, that's probably a lot of the large problem we have is they rent a home for 18 people, but they don't tell them that, we only have parking for 3 vehicles or 4 vehicles. So when they show up with 8 vehicles, and what are they going to do? So thank you, Mayor.
I have a question, too. When you were talking about the Holiday Isle Homeowners Association violations on noise, out of those 4 noise, those were the ones that the Homeowners Association reported or dealt with, gave out violations for.
Right.
Were those short-term rentals, or was it a mixture?
It was a mixture.
It wasn't just short-term rentals out of the 4. Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the right side of the room? Seeing none, we'll start over here in the center. Sir. Just all you got to do is state your name and address and go on the public record.
All right. My name is James Barnes. I'm a resident at 31307 Mallards Pond Court, Spring, Texas, and I'm the property manager for my family's short-term rental property at 613 Magnolia Drive in Holiday Isle. With all the big changes being proposed to the short-term rentals here in Destin, and specifically in Holiday Isle, I felt the need to educate myself on what exactly the short-term rental task force was doing. So by public record request, I requested audio tapes of all the meetings, and I listened to all of them, but I really just want to talk about one. The very first meeting on November 29th, 2017, with then-Mayor Scott Fisher in attendance. To start the meeting off, Land Use Attorney Kimberly Kopp addressed the new short-term rental task force about the Florida Sunshine Law. She warns against the appearance of any wrongdoing. She said that the meeting of any two task force members outside of a formal meeting would be considered an official meeting outside of the Sunshine. Because the short-term rental task force was making suggestions to City Council to be voted on, it falls under the Sunshine Law, and she suggested that, therefore, could be subject to civil and criminal penalties. To clarify, short-term rental task force member Rick Scalia asked the question if he could attend his normal monthly meeting with Jason Sprinkle for a professional meeting that they had on monthly, and he was advised that they could not meet together at that meeting, that one of them had to be absent, which leads me to this. How is it possible that we had two short-term rental task force members on the Holiday Isle Improvement Association, as well as our mayor on the Holiday Isle Improvement Association board? It would virtually be impossible for there to be no violations of the Florida Sunshine Law. As a matter of fact, there had to have been multiple violations. So my question is, given that there was such blatant disregard for the Florida Sunshine Law, should we be approving any ordinances that they brought forward to the City Council right now? It's my belief that there should be an investigation into this blatant disregard and obvious lack of respect for the Florida Sunshine Law, and perhaps we should even pursue some civil and criminal penalties against Guy Tadlock, Darrell Shelton, and Scott Fisher. They clearly collaborated for complete disregard of the law. As a matter of fact, every time the Sunshine Law was brought up in that first meeting, Guy Tadlock quickly changed the topic.
Sir, just address myself or the council and not other individuals, okay?
Yes, sir.
Or you can just say task force.
Okay.
And I just took 15 seconds of his time, Ray.
That's pretty much it. I just feel that with the blatant violations of the Florida Sunshine Law, I don't even know if we should be moving forward with approving any of the suggestions that were made by the task force. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Come on up.
Ms., can we ask our attorney, our land use attorney who addressed the Sunshine Law issue with the committee to talk a little bit about what was discussed in Sunshine?
Sure. It is not the case that just because you're on the task force, you can never meet with anybody else on the task force. What they couldn't meet about outside of the Sunshine was anything that would foreseeably be before the task force as something that they were reviewing for recommendations. So just like any other board, it's not that they can't meet, it's that they can't meet to talk about the business they are arranged to talk about out of the Sunshine. And with that being said, the city is not involved in making Sunshine Law determinations.
Thank you, Ms. Kopp. Next, you can clear the slate. Ray?
Ben Giles, 1159 Troon Drive, Miramar Beach. I want to address some specific issues with this proposed ordinance. First, the ordinance does not address what an occupant is. If a rental guest has visitors past 10 p.m., are those visitors then considered occupants? What is the difference between a visitor and an occupant? Is it the intent to be an overnight tenant? According to Section 13-117B of the ordinance, after 10 p.m., the occupancy load of the unit may not exceed the max allowed for number for overnight guests. The occupancy load of the unit means the interior of the house. If that's the case, then it's perfectly fine for visitors to remain on the property past 10 p.m., just not to go inside the house. So what do you do if a visitor needs to go to the bathroom? They can't go inside, they have to go outside? If it's after 10 p.m., and a visitor has too much to drink and can't occupy the property because they're subject to an occupancy violation, the city ordinance would require that person to leave. If that person gets in an accident and hurts or kills somebody, do you think the city bears any responsibility for that? With regard to parking, what's the purpose of limiting the number of cars that are rental? As many cars as possible should be able to park on the property as long as they park on the improved area. Some driveways are small, some driveways are large, but if you can park on the improved area, what difference does it make? A neighbor's quiet enjoyment of their home is not affected by the number of cars that are parked at a nearby rental. Is the mere sight of multiple cars in a driveway so visually offensive to someone that we need an ordinance to limit parking on private property? The ordinance itself does not address how the maximum parking is calculated. It does not define what type of vehicles are included in the maximum parking. Vehicles such as boats, motorcycles, scooters, golf carts, motorhomes, and anything else motorized. The ordinance does not make accommodations for additional cars in the driveway, such as maintenance, hired chef, delivery service, or even the owner or rental management company. The parking maximum should be consistent, if there is one, should be consistent with the occupancy maximum time frame between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. Regarding owner occupancy, when an owner uses the rental house personally, if I want to go to use my rental house and have my family and my friends over there for Thanksgiving, I should be able to use it as I see fit and not be subject to any occupancy restriction or parking restriction. An owner should be able, like me, should be able to have quiet enjoyment of my home just like a non-rental owner does, and I should be able to invite whomever I want to my property. If this is not the case, then every homeowner in Destin should have to comply with the maximum occupancy and parking rule. Also, many rental homes are owned by entities, and those have multiple members. Each one of those members should be afforded the same benefit. Regarding grandfathering, the grandfathering portion of the ordinance should include the ability to apply for vested rights for those owners who have made it known that they intend to operate a rental home. The city has made similarly proposed vesting for owners impacted by the LDC changes.
Wrap it up in 15 seconds, Ben.
Okay. Also, on page 1, the ordinance says, whereas certain short-term rentals are presently located within single-family residential zoning districts, those zoning districts should be defined and listed in the ordinance.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Anyone here next in the middle port? Patty, you can go next.
I'm Gary Troop, 86 Shira Street. And so, gosh, I never thought that I would see this come to, the race card being played. My wife volunteered her time to come and work on this committee, and now because we want to try and improve the short-term rentals and do some things, we're being accused of being racist now. And then the sunshine law thing, it makes you not want to volunteer to do anything, to be honest with you. But anyway, so I just wanted to mention a few things, make a few points. And one is that if you're going to make any data-driven decisions, do it off a database that you own. Don't do it off a database where people fill out whatever they want. And I'm talking about the short-term rental database. People put in there, whatever they want in terms of square footage. It could be the heated, it could be the total. And I've looked at those things and I've compared houses on my street. One of them has listed 8 bedrooms. The appraisal database has 5. It lists 8 bathrooms. The appraisal database has 5. It lists 3,500 square feet in the appraisal database system and 4,900 in the rental listing. So if you're going to use any of that data, you need to make sure it correlates with the trusted data, which is the appraiser database, not what people put in their rental listings. Okay? I think that's important. The other thing, when you look at occupancy levels, what I think people are trying to do is they're trying to put in certain rules about certain size houses that will mitigate any impact of these ordinances. And what we're trying to do is have ordinances that will protect homeowners in single-family residential neighborhoods. We're not trying to minimize the impact of the ordinance. We're trying to minimize the impact of short-term rentals on homeowners. The one I have to agree with Ben Giles is that if the owner's in that house, then they should be treated as the owner. Okay? I don't think that should be extended to everybody that might be in that corporation that owns the house. But certainly we do have occupancy limits on single-family homes that are long-term rentals. And they're much more stringent than what we're proposing for short-term rentals. So if they'd like to go by that, I mean, we can all live by one rule, it'll be that one, and they're not going to like that one at all. I guarantee you that. The other thing that I want to tell you is that your protection on the north side of 98 against short-term rentals is very weak. If somebody wants to come in and put a short-term rental in there and fight the city, it'll probably go there based on state law. Long term, they're coming your way, and you need to think about that. You need to think about protecting all of Destin. Right now, Crystal Beach and the beach areas are on the front line of the war, but it's coming everywhere, not just in Destin, but everywhere in the United States. And we're overrun, and I think you guys know that. We've been doing this for a long time. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. Ms. Brown?
Hi, Patty Brown, 86 Shira Street. I was a member of the short-term rental task force. I offered myself up. I was chosen. I had no hidden agenda. I worked extremely hard. I have hundreds of hours into doing research all over the country. I welcomed any short-term rental person to contact me, and many of them did, and we discussed things, and I would go and research or try to validate what they were telling me. There is no way, shape, or form I've ever shown any racism. I find it so offensive that these things are being brought up. Do we have to go there in order to win? My issue the whole time was never to block short-term rentals, was just to bring things so we had some ability to control some of the issues that we had. I attended every single meeting, didn't miss one. I never got into a screaming match or were called names, although I was subject to that. And even some of the emails that I've read that were written by people in this audience called me names. And I am a very fair person, and I'm very willing to listen to anybody. And how are we ever going to get people to come forth and be willing to work on these task force to try to make our city better if they have to be subjected to these types of things, threats, name calling? I mean, really? This is not middle school. We're trying to all work for a better community. And so I'm very disappointed at some of the things that have been said tonight and things I've read this past week. Just respect the fact that we did offer a lot of our time. You may not agree with us, and that's your right, but we did work really hard to try to come up with some things that would work for everybody. And I, in no way, shape, or form, ever wanted to hurt the smaller houses because they were never our problem. Our problem's been in the last 5 or so years where these loopholes have opened up houses that by Florida statute are hotels. So let's be fair. Let's look at what we can do as a group and not look at what the bottom line is, because we're all going to have to compromise at some point. And please don't destroy people's reputation in this community by calling them names or insinuating that they had hidden agendas, because I can assure you that was never me, never will be me, and I really am offended by it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. We got a couple more here in the middle, and then I'll hit the last group over here. I think we got a couple more here in the middle, so before we get to the group on the left.
Ken Wampler, 310 Leroy P. Loop. Thank you for your time, Mayor, council members, and if I don't see you, Merry Christmas. I'm here today to repeat a lot of the things that I've said before. A previous speaker spoke about data, and I'll bring it up again. I updated the code violations all year long, and one of the things that was talked about with the short-term vacation rental was, let's pass the things that were unanimous, and let's see what impact it was. Well, that impact showed that there was actually a decrease in the 3 big violations that caused the majority of the angst amongst the community: trash, noise, and parking. I will submit to you all that those 3 issues continue to be the issue, and I think if we focus our attention on anything else, I think it's going in the wrong direction. So we're back here today because we wanted to see what the impact was. Well, the impact was code violations went down. There's a litany of reasons why the code violations went down. The website is cumbersome, hard to work on, hard to submit problems. If that's the case, and I believe that's the case, then there's the issue that we need to be addressing tonight, not adding more ordinances. If we deal with the 3 issues, I would ask that you all focus your attention on that, but also remember these are single-family residences. These are not townhomes, these are not triplexes, these are not duplexes. The last time we went through an exercise with short-term vacation rentals, somehow townhomes got grouped into that. So whatever you do today, remember it's single-family homes that's bringing us here today. There's been a significant change over in the code enforcement staff. You've been short-staffed. That's probably why our three big issues continue to be a big issue. So if you get the code enforcement up, and I truly believe Joey's going in the right direction with the right staff, he'll get those things turned under. I also remind you all that one of the things that the staff is looking for is some more support, some more penalties that can be imposed if someone violates it. Well, I was on a committee with other individuals called the Business Tax Receipt Committee. We gave the city manager and the city council some ability to enforce things, remove their ability to be a tax collector in the district. That's something that obviously you failed to take any action on. So why not, instead of adding another ordinance, take action on the things that are in front of you that could add more penalties, that would penalize the individuals that are violating the codes that are currently in place. Public complaints. Clearly, you all are getting barraged with phone calls and emails, and what they're telling you is truly their perception and their reality. And I'm not sitting here telling you that it's not, but what I'm saying to you is the data is not supporting taking any additional action. And just like a previous owner said, do not refute the data. And the data says that what you did already reduced the number of code violations, and we need to focus on those three things. If the constituents call you or email you, encourage them to follow the process. As a manager of a homeowners association, if you don't follow the process, then you're wasting everybody's time. So I encourage you as council members, don't let them drop that in your lap. Make sure that they follow the process. Final thing I will say, Mr. Mayor, is it's almost paramount, and I'm not sitting in your seat, and I you know, empathy for sure. But it's almost like you're being bullied into taking action when there's four things that I've said here today you currently have the ability to take action on that you haven't done. So,
wrap it up, Ken. Sorry.
So please, I beg of you, enforce what you have, and if that doesn't work, then by all means come back to an occupancy.
Ken. Come on up, sir. State your name and where you live, as if we don't know already. But this is for the public record, so that's why we request it.
Bill Reddington, 722 Vintage Circle, Destin, Florida, resident for 18 years, real estate agent. Okay, it's rather apparent to me that y'all are trying to do things to curtail vacation rentals. Okay, so number one, I have a question. If we're trying to go after vacation rentals to limit occupancy and so forth and so on, why are we looking at spending money for $70 million worth of new beach access? That just kind of doesn't make sense to me, because you're trying to curtail the people that are there. Okay, when I was sitting around today, I mean, here's 7 homes that are in Crystal Beach. Okay, I didn't bring you a copy about it. I didn't even think about it. These are all 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and there is a couple 3-bedrooms in there. They're less than 1,500 square feet. Well, when I used to be in the vacation rental business myself with a property that I owned that slept 18, okay, that had like 8 or 9 or 10 parking places, so that was never an issue. But these people like with a 2-2, I mean, in reality, a 2-2 can sleep reasonably. In my master bedroom, I had a king-size bed as well as a small bed for people that had small children, okay? In the bedrooms, you could have a minimum of 2 bunks, okay? And in some instances, if you're having bunks on each side, then you'd sleep 4 in there if they got kids, okay? I'm not talking multiple families. And then if you have a hide-a-bed, okay, that adds 2 more, okay? So the 250 square feet, these people would be out of luck. Because this house, the first example, is only 1,320 square feet. Okay, nobody's uncomfortable. Nobody's sleeping on the floor. You know, everybody's in a bed. I mean, it's like a normal house. Okay, so I think you all just need to examine your goals on the restrictions, as a number of other people have mentioned. And same answer. Why are we looking at 7 more beach accesses if you're trying to limit the people that can stay there to the tune of $70 million? And I don't care where the money's coming from.
Thank you, sir. I had another hand up over here. Is this it? Gone once, twice. Come on up. You're kind of in the middle, so you're going to have to, I'll get you next. Or you can sit over there. Or you can sit over here. Go ahead.
Jim Bagby, 4709 Sea Star Vista, and I
am a CAM and vacation rental manager down in Walton County and have been a town manager in Rosemary Beach. And I think what you're trying to do is admirable. You're trying to strike a balance. You're trying to find a sense of community. You drive down Shira and you see those mini hotels, those 5 hotels that have been built. That's not right, okay? The house, I was just talking to some folks, the house next to us, our street used to be all either permanent residents or people's second homes that nobody rented. Now it's about 50-50. The house next to us, my wife lost it when the KAs from Auburn, she's not a racist, but the whole KA fraternity came down from Auburn in spring break week and stayed at the house next to us. Trucks everywhere, in the grass, things like that. Of course, we call our homeowners association. We don't call code enforcement. We don't call the sheriff. We call them to take care of the noise after 10 o'clock. So a lot of the reports that you're looking for. But they were real nice kids, and when we told them at 10 o'clock it's quiet time, they went out partying, so that's fine. We didn't hear them until they came back at 3 a.m. Well, they got to come home sometime. You know, don't write something you can't enforce. You're not going to go inspect people's houses at midnight and see how many bodies are in there. I think a year and a half ago we had the same conversation. I told you square footage. So Mayor, if this was your idea to add it to this option, that's the thing, because you build a house and they will tell you, oh, it's only got 3 bedrooms, so we only have to have 4 parking spots, but they've got a media room and they've got a mud room that you can fit bunk beds in, and they got a, you know, 2 living rooms, and the next thing you know, that 3-bedroom is a 7-bedroom sleeping 24 people. So just go by the square footage and say, and parking is the key. You're not going to go in there and count people. But if you make them use space in that lot, because a lot of those lots out there are not that big, if you say you build this much, you build 3 stories, you build 35 feet or 30 feet high, and you got 7,000 square feet, then you're going to have 15 parking spots. That will cut a lot of that problem out. And then the goal should not be to get rid of short-term rentals. That is some of the lifeblood of this community. You can't totally eliminate them, and that's everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody came here first either assigned to the military or as a tourist, okay? And they didn't grow up here. And they found it and they love it, just like you love it, and give people a chance to come here, find this place, love it, and make their home here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Steve Duranian. I live at 72 Covia Street in Crystal Beach. I shall be brief. I'm just a homeowner. But I've heard all the issues tonight about the short term, a lot of property owners and rental managers and all that stuff. I'm not an expert on it, but I do read things. I think you guys are looking for solutions rather than know all the problems. Right now, several years ago, Vail, Colorado, it had all these problems. It's a pretty popular place. We all know it's a ski area. They passed an ordinance addressing noise, parking, trash, and several other short-term rentals. So they have a lot of them up there. And what they also had in the ordinance was they had a belief that the council and or the city to have a little bit of teeth in enforcing that. I won't get into details here, but imitation is the best form of flattery is imitation is the best form of flattery. In August of this year, sir, Breckenridge looked at that ordinance and liked it so much they copied it, not necessarily verbatim, but tweaked it to their town. What I recommend you do is a solution to a lot of this stuff is maybe write this down or recommend it. Call Breckenridge, the council or the leadership up there, see what they passed. Basically, allow the owners of those rent or property managers or the people in charge of that property to have response time. Within, I think Vail's was actually 30 minutes, and Breckenridge tweaked it back to 1 hour. But they had, and if they didn't respond to that hour, there was consequences. Just a recommendation for a solution to a problem which I see here is being addressed across the board. So going forward, I mean, I'll stop right there. Recommend you, like someone call up there, see what type of ordinance, get a copy of it, look it over. Maybe you can take some parts of it and apply it to the problems you have here. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Last bunch, Mr. Tadlock.
Honorable Mayor and councilors, I'm Guy Tadlock. I live on Noriego. The city tonight is in an important crossroads, but I want you to know I don't think you're being bullied. We can get our arms around short-term rentals, or we can continue to let them go somewhat unbridled. The short-term rental task force identified on the onset that occupancy was the root problem of short-term rentals. During those meetings, we came very close to unanimously approving a occupancy level. We couldn't quite get there, but we got pretty close. The problem primarily was that we couldn't determine an age for children, or what was defined as children. But claiming that parking, garbage, and noise are now fixed, so therefore occupancy levels are not needed, makes no sense whatsoever. This argument against occupancy is totally related to profits and has no bearing whatsoever on fixing the problem. The community of Crystal Beach was platted in 1936. The size of the lots were 50 foot by 150, with some smaller ones as small as 50 feet by 100 feet. The average size of houses during that decade was 1,200 square feet and an average household of 3.47 members. Crystal Beach layout was never intended for the size houses and use that's occurring today. For a moment, I want you to consider a football field. Football field is 100 yards long, but it's also, more specifically, it's 160 feet wide and 300 feet long. 160 feet wide by 300 foot long. On Shower Street, there are 3 mega houses, or mini hotels, as Mr. Bagby called them, that's built on lots about half the size of a football field. These mini hotels advertise 30 per house, or 90 people total. Parking, garbage, and noise were problems all summer long. Occupancy was the problem. And there are more of these mega houses or mini hotels on the way. Most view these as a workaround for hotels that clearly cannot be built due to the limited space, parking, and zoning. It appears to be that these have become a niche that provides lodging for large groups for considerably less than convention centers or hotels. Now I want you to look at this room for a moment. By county records, this room is 42 feet by 106 feet, or about 4,500 square feet. Most of the lots in Crystal Beach are about 5,000 square feet, or a little bigger than this room. Houses that advertise up to 14 to 25 people. This intensity is totally unacceptable for houses around 2,000 square feet and 3 to 5 bedrooms on tiny lots with no more than 2 parking places. This explains the bedrooms and garages, laundry rooms, and lofts in many of their advertisements. Occupancy is the problem. Finishing up, clearly the city needs to better control short-term rentals in the Destin market. The problem far outpaces the infrastructure of the city, resulting in degradation of the quality of life of citizens. 2 plus 2 would be a step in a positive direction to correcting this problem.
Wrap it up if you
Thank
could,
very
Guy.
much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Anyone else over on that side of the room would like to speak? Mr. Shelton.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. Darrell Shelton, 18 Noriega Road on Holiday Isle. A few minutes ago, a comment was made regarding maybe it would be smart for you to kick the can down the road. I totally disagree. This can has been kicked down the road for the last 3 to 4 years, and we all know that. It's decision-making time, and it's time to make some tough decisions. If you jumped out of an airplane with a parachute and the parachute didn't open, are you going to flap your arms? No, you're going to pull your reserve chute. Destin is in a free fall, and it is time to pull that reserve chute and do what's right. A previous commenter made the point that me and Guy Tadlock, serving on the short-term rental task force, had an agenda. I can tell you that we did not have a personal agenda. We had an agenda for what we thought was the right thing for the city of Destin as a whole. I really have feelings for these poor people that live out at Crystal Beach. We had another commenter talking about code violations. I mentioned this to you previously. We had 520-something violations on Holiday Isle this year. And of those 520-something violations, 69.7% of them came from 40 single-family rental properties, which represent less than 2% of all the properties on Holiday Isle. Think about that for just 1 second. We had another commenter that said we violated the Sunshine Law. Mr. Tadlock and I serve on the Holiday Isle Board of Directors, and we had to have these meetings, but we didn't talk about what we were going to do at the short-term rental task force. So, because of the situation, yes, we were seen meeting, but for somebody to accuse us of violating the Sunshine Law just because they saw us meeting is asinine. You had some comments about racial discrimination. The only thing that's ever been mentioned, as far as I know, before this council or in front of a Holiday Isle board meeting was the degradation of our visitors. The quality of our visitors are going down, and everybody in here knows that.
Can you wrap it up, Guy?
With that being said, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, and I'm going to finish up by telling you that the Holiday Isle Board of Directors did not we did not vote to outlaw short-term rentals on Holiday Isle. All we did was to vote to allow the people to vote on it, and we live in a democratic society, and that's all we did.
Thank you, Guy. Appreciate it, sir. That would like to share. Well, okay, come on up to the podium. We're taking them one at a time. Just step up to the microphone, state your name, where you live, and then push the button, Robert.
I'm Robert Martin. I live at the Enclave for 26 plus years. I have had rental property, my wife and I, and I just would like to make some comments about what I've heard tonight. This is a resort community. It's a vacation community. People come down here, you know, to say when we own property, Abbott, if you all remember the Abbott boys, we rented out a couple of our 3 bedrooms. They put in bunk beds for those people they brought in during the summer, and they were perfectly fine. The biggest problem I have seen here is during spring break. I know of one instance, I've been told anyway, in Terracotta Way, where this owner took care of his garage. He made his garage into a multi-bedroom complex. And supposedly, I've heard he's had in excess of 25, 35 kids in there. I'm aware of our own, I don't think this is applying to condominiums, but in the Enclave alone, I've seen 15 or 20 kids. We go in, we talk to them. Most of them are pretty nice. If they're not, we call the sheriff. I think that the limitations that you all have set per bedroom or perhaps per square feet are a little severe, except during spring break. I don't think there's any question during spring break that, you know, these homes are abused. But I wanted to just thought after listening to all the comments that someone needs to remind you all this is a resort community. We're here to rent. That people rent their homes and their condominiums, which doesn't apply, and that's what people come down here to have fun. And yes, we have problems during spring break, but for the most part, I haven't heard of any problems that I know of in the 26 years. Many anyway, after spring break. I just wanted you all to think about that before you pass this very restrictive occupation limitation, at least Because it seems to me it's a little more generous, could be a little more generous if you're going to bring 2 or 3 families down. Thank you very much. I know you'll do the right thing.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, you may approach the podium. Nobody else has raised their hand. So if you're going to raise your hand, I'll ask again after our next speaker.
Hi, Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court, Holiday Isle. I'm not going to repeat myself tonight. So I was driving down the road the other day, and it occurred to me that nobody's ever talked about the occupancy that's allowed for condominiums or hotels or motels, whatever you want to call them, in the city of Destin. So I took it upon myself to do a little brief research. So everything I say is an approximation by numbers. Approximately 75 total condos south of Highway 98 between the county line to the Marlar Bridge. To my knowledge, approximately 12 of those condos do not allow short-term rentals. And I personally looked up 16 condos on their websites to see what their occupancy was in their units. And I would say 98% of them are 2+2. There were a couple randoms that were 3-bedroom that slept 9 or 10. And there was not one over that count for any of the bedrooms that they have. Then I took it upon myself to call 3 of the local hotels, one of which was not located on the south side of 98. One was located north side, and their occupancy was 2 per bed in their rooms. So if it's a 2 queen-size room, they allow 4 occupants. If they have a couch, they allow 2 more, or they will pull in a rollaway for 1 extra person at 5. So with that being said, it just was really interesting to me. The last thing about condos is that the CCNRs of several of the condos noted that each unit was to only be occupied as a single-family residential dwelling. I thought that was interesting. And I also found this in the rules and regulations of one of the condominiums, and it said, quote, "The pleasantness of condominium living is greatly enhanced by a congenial atmosphere in which all residents and their guests have proper regard for the comfort of others." Isn't that what we're asking for in our residential neighborhoods? I don't oppose short-term rentals, but I definitely think we have an occupancy problem. I would also state that everyone should remember that Bruce Crowell was also a member of that task force who ran a business or runs a business at the Emerald Grand with occupancy and also lives in Terracotta with occupancy issues. He spoke very eloquently about the different issues in both those industries and his home. Somebody said to not pass it because it can't be enforced. If you pass it, code enforcement can't enforce it. If I have a property next to me and I count 18 heads going into a place that only sleeps 6, I can call code enforcement and they have the teeth to enforce occupancy. The last thing that I'd like to say is that I was at the Holiday Isle meeting. They did not vote to ban short-term rentals. They voted to put a vote out to the entire membership of 1,900 people because that's the way our PCNRs read.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else on this issue tonight on the public hearing on this particular short-term rental ordinance? We got one more. You don't have to sprint, even that might be part of your rehab.
Steve Menschel, 65 Siesta Bluff in Destin. I live in the same neighborhood as Mr. Bagby, and he mentioned before about having call security. We're fortunate enough that we employ our own security, so we don't have to call the sheriff's office, we don't call code enforcement. I was on the board of directors on the association there, and I can tell you that in 2017, 92% of all of the tickets and all the violations that occurred in Destiny East were rental homes. Okay? So again, rental homes from an association standpoint were a problem for us that we're working through. Okay, they're minor things, trash cans. Again, associations have their own set of rules that are above and beyond the city. But again, the rental properties there, okay, are they getting better? Yes. The one thing that you've heard tonight, you've heard passion on both sides. The one thing you have to do is you can't keep kicking the can down the road. Occupancy is a serious issue, and no matter how you define it, you're going to have to work with occupancy. And I know this may or may not have been covered, and I apologize because I'm telling you I don't know the law and what I'm about to say. But the question I have in these mini hotels is, at some point in time, has there been any consideration with the fire department about occupancy because of a safety hazard? I don't know that law. But in some of these hotels, some of these big buildings, God forbid if there was a fire, some of these kids couldn't get out. So again, I know that's not on the table right now, but it's just something for consideration moving forward. So again, consider occupancy, and unfortunately, everybody's not here, but at some point in time, you're going to have to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Going once, going twice. All right. That's, at this point, we will just end the public testimony portion of this ordinance. I'm just going to lead off because I'm sure our council members that are here will want to make comments, and I'll make a closing comment if we do have a motion or a second and decide to vote on this. Kim and I went back and forth, and I was, I brought up the square footage as one of the occupancy levels thing to consider, and that's why she produced 2 different ordinances. Since then, I've come to realize that unless we did a multi-tiered square footage occupancy rental thing, that the numbers just don't work. And so before we get into debate and stuff like that, I think that probably that particular document, you can consider if you want, but it's got more problems than issues that it can solve. And seeing how I'm the one that initiated the per person per square foot, I would just want to basically withdraw that recommendation at this time. And I just wanted the council to understand that before we move forward anymore. First up on this issue, Mr. Marler.
Thank you, Mayor. How do you address this? It's very difficult. We are a resort community, and we have to understand that. And yes, we do have a problem with occupancy in some situations. Things have been brought up about how do we enforce it. Technically, we start head counts. If we try to enter a home and do a head count, we're violating the law because we don't have a search warrant to go in there. Now, when we actually approve of a short-term rental, such as they're going to be a short-term rental register, we should be allowed to go in and count how many people are supposed to be able to be slept there, and base that upon if we have the original plans or DOs that we can pull up in records to see what it was originally built as to hold and what's been modified, and then go from there. The biggest thing that I see is that we're trying to push some stuff through without allowing the stuff that's already been there. We have a new code enforcement director who has had a plan, that has presented that plan to the council, and we need to allow it to be implemented and try it before we start doing a bunch of rules and regulations that I don't know if code enforcement is going to be able to enforce. We have rules on the books that code enforcement has already said that they can enforce with the manpower that they have and a couple of more people that will probably end up approving to be hired. Occupancy is always going to be a problem, and I've noticed in some things that what happens on Saturdays and Sundays during fall. It's football season, so as another person stated earlier about bringing guests over. So you have guests over to watch a football game. Well, the football game goes over 10 o'clock at night. What are you going to do? Send everybody home that's not supposed to be staying there? It's not an easy task to sit here and try to decide, well, we're going to decide exactly how many people are going to be in a home. And truthfully, short-term rentals and residential homes should be equal if you're going to do it that way. I have a driveway that'll hold 5 cars. So what if I have a 6th person come over with a 6th car and I park him in my yard? Am I violating something? As long as I'm not parking on the sidewalk, I'm not violating the law because it's my lawn. I can park a car on it if I want to. I don't think occupancy right now is the issue. I think, again, as my opinion, that we should allow code enforcement, since they've ramped it up, restructured their system, to let code enforcement do their job without having to pass more and more rules and regulations, and then come back to the situation of, if it's not working, if code enforcement sees there's a problem that we need to pass something on occupancy, then yes, we should pass an ordinance on occupancy. But let code enforcement do their job now that we have a new sense of purpose with code enforcement. I think Joey can do a great job doing it, and I think that's the way we should go.
Thank you, Mr. Marler. Mr. Overdeer?
Mr. Mayor, if we might, I think a lot of the questions that have been posed by a lot of the audience tonight, I think kind of set around code enforcement. Maybe we might want to hear from Joey, hear his answers to some of these questions that have been brought up, and then I've got some comments after he speaks, if you'll allow him to speak.
You have the floor, sir.
I'm going to answer you honestly and my professional opinion in looking at everything. One thing we do know is it's not going to work with reactive enforcement, period. We need a mixture of proactive and reactive. The plan I put before you will work. We have to maintain compliance, visibility, transparency. It's like a machine. You got to keep it oiled. When you look at the occupancy, as it's written, we are not going to be able to go in private property and count heads. It can't happen. We'd have to get an inspection warrant, and with an inspection warrant, you'd bog down the courts. And then our word is on the line. What we can do is, how it's written, is we'd have to hire a data. So in that, I'm going to have to hire another personnel that's going to help IT to catch that data, to start identifying the ones that are advertising above your occupancy. That's the only way we can catch them. That's it.
And that's my understanding as well, that we're not going to go out and start counting heads inside of houses. I mean, we're not going to go on private property and do that. What we're trying to do is, if we can look on the web and see what they're advertising. If their house, if we say that it's 2 plus 2, that tells you that in a 4-bedroom house you can have 10 people. If they're advertising for 20 people, that's a violation. Correct? And that's where we're going to get the money, that's where we're going to get the fees, and that's where we're going to get their attention. That's how you hold their feet to the fire, is not going in there and checking to see how many kids you got sleeping in a bed tonight. It's by how much are the owners, or how much are the management companies, how much are they advertising for, based on what our occupancy levels are. And I know that, listen, I've talked to property managers, and I've talked to residents, owners here that are being affected by some of the things that are going on here. And I've called other towns and talked to their code enforcement folks, and I will tell you that everybody I called and talked to had something on the books that was just way far ahead of what we have. We've gone on for so long, and people have just accepted that this is the norm because it's gone on. This is the way it's always been. Well, but it's been wrong, and it needs to be changed. And there's going to be some people that are going to leave here tonight. In fact, I don't think anybody's going to go out here ready to go do cartwheels. Everybody here is going to be affected a little bit. I'm trying to figure out in my own mind the best way to have some kind of a compromise so that nobody gets really damaged, but that we get something under control here that Joey can enforce, that we can live with, and that the people that live here permanently are not affected by the residents that come here that we thrive off of, that we love to have come here, because we are a tourist community and we know that. And a lot of the reason that we're able to live here and live at the level that we're at is because of all the money that these tourists bring in here and the money that they contribute to our economy. But so we're not trying to do anything to harm the tourist industry, but we're also not. I don't think it's not fair to our citizens that live here. It's not fair for them to be harmed either by all the noise and everything that goes on around them and disrupting their lives. So I think all we're trying to do here is come up with some kind of a solution to this problem, and something that then our code enforcement can help enforce and bring this thing a little bit more under control, because I think everybody is going to agree that there are problems that we have to address, and the only way we can address it is by having something on the books that we can live with.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, a little over a year ago, we were all sitting here and having almost the same discussion, but it was before we had put together the short-term rental task force. And that's what spurred our decision to put such a task force together. And the goal of this task force and the goal of the council was for us to select members that were diverse, that they represented different aspects and interests throughout the city and even beyond. We wanted property owners. We wanted full-time residents. We wanted property managers. We wanted people that didn't even live here and yet they had rental homes, because we wanted and we knew we needed a variety of perspectives. And so this committee worked their tails off. They met every single week for 4 months, trying to go through every scenario, every issue, and come together and reach some sort of consensus on what would work best in this community based on all their different perspectives. And they did that admirably. They came back to us and they had a whole list of items that they had come together on, worked on. Now, not all of them were unanimous. Some were split decisions. Some were, nope, we're not going forward with that. But that was the goal, for them to come back having really done all the research and discussed every angle of the issues. When they came back, we decided as a council to go ahead and approve anything that had been unanimous. And we did that. We moved forward with that. One of the last remaining issues was the occupancy, and we find ourselves here tonight having the same discussions we've had since I was on this council first elected in 2014, and I'm sure far before that, as some of our councilmen here tonight from previous terms can attest to. And so I go back to the fact that certainly your pleas catch our attention. We don't want to hurt anyone. We don't want anyone to lose income. We don't even want anyone to be miserable because they live next door to the party house. So we have to decide what is best for our residents, because our residents are the ones that live here. They pay taxes. They elect us to represent them. And so I go back to this committee, and when they voted on occupancy, they had a 5-to-1 vote for a 2+2. Now, there was some discussion about how to mark children and what age were children, but it was 5-to-1 for a 2+2. When we met in June, the one dissenting vote approached council and approached me and said, I'm on board now. I will go with the 2+2. Which essentially makes that vote, that was Mr. Scally. And that was essentially switching it to a unanimous vote. These are the experts that we put in place to assist us in making decisions. And so I go back to what they presented to us, what their hard work and effort has presented and put together, and I fully support what they have presented and what appears to be the best solution at this time, which is a 2+2.
I don't see anybody up in the holding pattern. We have a first reading of ordinance 1829-CC before us, and I made my disclaimer on the per square foot document. So that brings us back to the other one, which has 2+2 in it, correct, Kim?
Correct.
Okay. So before I entertain a motion concerning that particular document, I want to put this out before we go to a second reading, because we'll have to make a motion to address that, either send it as it is or make some changes right now before we go further, correct?
Yes.
All right, so here's my comments. One of the things about occupancy rates, we have the ordinance written that has addressed the things that most of the people, including the STR task force, said were the big issues: trash, parking, noise. And we believe them, and that's why that's in the ordinance. But the ordinance really hasn't had time to work yet. And before, or as we pass that ordinance, and since then, we've hired a new code enforcement guy, and the reason we hired him is because it was apparent to everyone that the existing situation was unattainable and was maybe one of the reasons why we had to pass the original ordinance to address trash, noise, and parking, because unfortunately, folks weren't doing their job. One of the things about occupancy rate, and I've read every single email that Mr. Shelton has sent me and Mr. Tadlock, because they have provided us with a tremendous amount of good information. I've also read the emails and the documents and the city ordinances that some of the STR people that run businesses have sent me. So you just try to assimilate all this information, and from all that information, pro, con, in other words, I've come to some discussions with our attorneys, and one of the things about occupancy rates, and we'll just take Amelia Island as an example, because they are close to us. We can compare apples with Amelia Island, because they're a resort community and they have short-term rentals in the middle of their high-end residential communities. I don't want to compare myself with New York City or Miami because they don't compare with us. Amelia Island does. And one of the things that comes out of the occupancy side is our legal risk is minimal with the ordinance that we have now addressing noise, trash, and parking. And we're doing that also by mandatory registration, signage, and if we do our job, Joey, not to put that all on you, that most of the problems will be addressed. The problem, what I've seen with occupancy limits, is we leave ourselves severely exposed to Burt Harris claims. And in the case of Amelia Island, when they made their occupancy rate, which I believe was 2+2, Ms. Kopp, am I correct?
I think you're talking about Anna Maria, right?
Anna Maria.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Anna Maria Island. That one of the first things they did was they had 66 Burt Harris claims to the tune of about $55 million, I think it was. It was a lot.
They had many.
Many. And so that's why Ms. Kopp put in our briefing documents a couple of the cases to where the city ended up having to settle. And there's reasons why those Burt Harris claims don't go to court very often, is because A, they're very expensive, B, we don't have insurance for it. We only get $100,000 a year, not per occurrence, per year. And so most of the time cities settle to avoid litigation, because if you lose the litigation, you not only have to pay for your litigation, but you have to pay for the other person. So in most cases they settle because it's best. So my concern with setting occupancy levels and opening ourselves up to that legal risk is, will we get where we want to get with addressing these problems that are affecting the quality of life for our full-time residents? So in the interest of taking a conservative approach and trying to provide good governance for our community, my recommendation at this point, because I realize that we did the math on the square footage, that wasn't going to solve the problem, is that we either do one of two things. We either let the present ordinance as we have it written without occupancy level do its job under the guidance of our new code enforcement department in 2019. And the beauty of our system of government is it doesn't take 5 years to pass an ordinance, even though this one has probably taken that long. We can change our ordinance through resolution actually in a matter of weeks, if not a month or two. So I'm recommending either we either make a more liberal occupancy rate of 2+4 with no age limits as a compromise, as a way to mitigate our risk to Burt Harris claims, 2 plus 4, or we do not put an occupancy limit at all. We allow 2019 short-term rental season to progress. We get our own document and data from our own code enforcement program. All the people that are in this room, pro and con against occupancy, can come back before this council at the end of the 2019 season, which is in the next 9 months. And at that time, we can either legislate or pat ourselves on the back that we did the right thing by being conservative, or just realize that we weren't hard enough and take more drastic measures like 2 plus 2 or involve something else. Those are just my comments. Those are my recommendations to this council. At this time, though, we are going to have to entertain a motion that could incorporate either one of those, or a motion to incorporate the ordinance just as it's written. And according to Robert's Rules of Order, we'll have if we get a motion a second, however that motion transpires, we'll have further discussion, debate. I don't get to vote on this issue. I'm just trying to find a soft place to land for everyone in this room. And regardless of the will of this council, then I'll support it and promote it. I've got Mr. Overdeer and Ms. Ramswell in line. Would you like to speak now, or would you rather wait till we have a motion in a second and then make your points or your recommendations at that time? Okay. All right. Mr. Overdeer.
I wasn't going to make the motion, but the other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was, obviously, Jason Sprinkle gave us a lot of data for us to look at. And the problem I have with the data is, number one, I don't know where the data came from other than whatever he says about it, and so I don't know that the data is 100% accurate. There's been some discussions about whether or not it's accurate at all. But one of the things that it does point out is that if we do 2 plus 2, it affects X number of people that are going to be, I think it's about 38% of the people are going to be affected by this. But if we change it to 2 plus 4, then it only affects about 10% of the people. I would tell you that's a significant change if the data is correct and if it's accurate, and if we're to believe that. And I'm not saying that I don't trust Mr. Sprinkle at all, because I know him and I like him and I do trust him, but I don't know that I can verify the data that he gave us. So I don't know that I can trust that to make a decision. Although I've listened to the mayor and I've listened to what our land use attorney has told us, and certainly if we do go 2 plus 4, it would mitigate our Burt Harris claims to the extent, and I don't know if that's going to eliminate the claims, and so maybe if we're not able to eliminate the claims, I don't know if we can stand any Burt Harris claims. If we were to lose those, I don't know how much that's going to impact the city. But if I were to lean right now, I would lean more towards 2 plus 4, because 2 more people. What that does then, if you're going 2 plus 2, that gives you X number of people in any house. 2 more people in that house are not going to make a lot more trash, noise, or parking. So if it's going to mitigate our Burt Harris claim that much, I would be in favor of raising it from 2.2 to 2.4. And I know that means we got to change what the ordinance is, and I think that's a significant change to the ordinance. So that means it can't be done on first reading tonight. It would have to come back in January. But
Ms. Ramswell?
Before I comment, Ms. Kopp, can you shed some light on the conversation and the items he was mentioning regarding Burt Harris?
Sure. In the city of Anna Maria, they passed an ordinance. The maximum occupancy there was 8, and they received a lot. I don't know the exact number. They received very many Burt Harris claims. But I don't think the city ever actually paid out any money at all as far as settling any of those cases. The way they settled those cases, based on my conversations with their attorneys, was via settlement agreements, which they're all on the City of Anna Maria's website, as well as the claims themselves. I pulled 2 just by way of example to put in the packet, and what they did was they grandfathered in. So if the maximum occupancy was 8 in the ordinance, they might have grandfathered 10, 12, 14, depending on the individual house. So that's the way they resolved them. And so I don't know if you have a specific question related to our ordinance, but I had suggested some of the new language that I put into the ordinances tonight that was not in there at the last meeting was a grandfathering clause. So first of all, the only people that would have any kind of claim about Burt Harris would be people that had occupancy above what the ordinance allows. So if they have more than 24 there now, or more, well, in this ordinance, yes, more than 24, then they would be able to apply for grandfathering if they are otherwise compliant with all provisions of the city's code. And if they are compliant with the code and can establish the current occupancy is higher than 24 and is currently allowed, and they want to maintain that occupancy, they would be granted the grandfathering for 5 years. And that would allow them to obtain their reasonable investment-based expectations. That's why that's there. And after that, they would have to come into compliance with the ordinance at that time. So these are the protections. This is the sort of compromise we tried to strike in order to address the Burt Harris claims. So with all that being said, of course, if you do pass it, there is a risk of those claims, but this is what we've done to mitigate.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. So, you know, deep breath. Okay, so in reviewing some of the data that has been presented to us by a couple different folks, I noted that, Mr. Sprinkle, this particular set of information is coming from what you had sent us, and you noted that homes that essentially with 24 or more people occupancy actually, by looking at these numbers, would be less than 2% of the total homes in your study. So that would only be 14 of the 742 homes that you've accounted for. So if we're looking at that 24-person cap, now clearly we list hotels at being 25 and over, so that seems like a very logical line. So I'm in favor of that. I also, Mr. Sprinkle, where you talk about revenue and the potential impact to revenue, and I hate to ask you this, but I think it's important because we don't want to needlessly hurt people. Would you mind coming up so you don't have to shout across the room? I hate to make you do that. But you talk about the revenue and how it would be impacted based on the potential changes. And I'm just wondering, how did you calculate that?
And just state your name for the public record, please.
Yes, sir. Jason Sprinkle. Yeah, so first of all, on the larger question of where the data comes from, so our company taps in with vacation rental companies' permission into their direct database. So we get a feed of every one of their reservations along with the information about their property unit. So we've got, I think, 11 vacation rental companies in town, most of the big ones that are customers of ours. And so every reservation they've had for the last few years and all their reservations currently that are booked flow into our system every 6 hours. So it's just the data we receive directly from them. The calculation on the, for this chart, the graph chart where it talks about the impact to revenue and home values.
What page is that for all of us?
It's the blue and green bar chart. It's the last page. So there's two numbers you're referring to, Ms. Ramswell. I think they're worth distinguishing. The first one is the impact to revenue, right? That comes from the average daily rent for the summer. So I took June and July, or the 12 peak weeks, and took the average daily rate, which we're getting every reservation, so the system calculates the average daily rate. And I looked at the average daily rate for homes that slept +2 and the average daily rate for homes that slept +4, and looked at the difference in the two of them. And so that's what this chart is intended to reflect. For 2-bedroom homes that sleep 2 versus 2-bedroom homes that sleep 4, there's a 3.44% difference in ADR. For 3 bedrooms, there's a 9.13% difference, and for 4 bedrooms, there's a 5.13% difference.
So, like, let's take, for example, this 3-bedroom, and you show a 9.13 decrease. Is that for the entire year? That would be...
That's for the summer ADR, but I can easily pull the entire year for the committee as well. I took the peak season, but you can look at the ADR over any period of time that you'd like to, and I'd be happy to provide it to the council.
And so what capacity did you look at? Did you look at maximum? So were you looking at if they rented it at maximum capacity every day in July?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you look at your average home, and my vacation rental company has the three big ones that everybody talks about on Shire and a lot of the big 8, 9 bedrooms. The maximum occupancy is obviously not the maximum average occupancy. We have 11 bedroom that sleeps 40. I'm sure 40 people have never been in there. We're not up here jumping up and down saying we have to have 40 people. The occupancy that you use to calculate these are just however many people showed up. So you're some fraction of the maximum occupancy, to your point. So if you have a house that sleeps 32, some days it rents for 4 people, some days it rents for 32 people, and most of the time it rents for, 20 to 25 people. Whatever they rented it for, based off no occupancy limits, that's what the ADR is.
Okay,
It's
so
just the actual revenue booked.
then it wouldn't take in consideration, for example, the folks that, let's say there's 12 people and they typically rent a 2-bedroom, but because of what we would put in place, let's say they're not going to rent a 2-bedroom anymore, so they're going to come back and rent a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom. Because I don't know what sort of algorithm you would put in to do that, but you haven't calculated those types of potentialities.
There's no algorithm here. It's just the pure data that exists right now. But presumptively, people rent the size house that they need until you get to the super large houses. If you've got 2 people traveling, you might rent a house that sleeps 4, but you're not going to rent a house that sleeps 14.
So actually, it could be that you might lose them because they're not going to rent your 4-bedroom, but they could be renting your 5 or 6-bedroom.
Say that again, you could bump them up to a larger bedroom house? Well, you're going to lose everybody that sleeps over the 24 for sure. All those larger groups are going to another city.
But according to your information here, those that sleep 24 and over represent less than 2%, right?
Yeah, I looked on Verbo yesterday. There's 114 homes in Destin that are listed on VRBO that sleep over 24 currently. Okay. It's a small percentage of the homes, but it's a large percentage of the people that come to town.
Sure. Thank you. I really appreciate you answering
Yes,
that for
and
me.
happy to provide any other data that y'all need as well.
So here's my thought, and you guys that live here know me by now. I understand being cautious and being concerned about the impact, both fiscally, financially, in every possible regard. But I can't sit up here and make decisions based on fear. And I think all of you probably know that not only has my child been threatened with death, I've received a cease and desist. I've also been threatened to have been sued. Fear doesn't work with me. I look at facts. I look at what I believe in my heart to be the best thing for this city and its residents. So while I certainly see the potential for litigation, I can't operate out of fear. And so I'm not going to let the potential for a Burt Harris change what I believe is the right thing to do in this case. So I'm standing by the 2+2.
I just want to address the fear comment. In no way was I trying to scare or put fear in anybody's heart with that. I was trying to take a very simplistic, common sense approach to, as we legislate up here, take into account risk management as legislators for this council. So it's no threats or fear or anything like that intended. I'm just trying to bring a ground level knowledge that we all need to consider when legislating. Part of doing what's best for the city is also being prudent with our legislative things. That being said, we do have an ordinance here, and I do need a motion either to accept it as written with a 2+2 or with 2+4 or no occupancy rates at all. I'm not going to dictate that. I cannot make any motion. So at this time, it is really late already, and we still have 4 more ordinances to deal with. So let's go ahead and get the show on the road. And if someone would like to step up to the plate.
Well,
We'll give
Mr.
it a
Mayor,
shot.
in the interest of seeing if there's any other support for this besides me, I'll make the motion that we do 2+4, which means we have to change the ordinance, and we would have to come back for first reading the 7th of January.
So I have a motion,
I'll second that, Mayor.
and I got a second, and Mr. Morgan, I probably should have not let him step ahead, but your first comment, I have a motion, I have a second.
Yeah, I think the consensus is not to go with the square footage. So for the first meeting in January, I would support it for Skip. I'd like to see what the absent council member has to say about it and come back with an ordinance with a 2+4 and a 2+2. Skip,
Do you want to make that a friendly?
Yeah, Skip, if you, did you just make a motion? We have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, but my motion is to
I'll
change
make
the
a
ordinance and make
substitute
it
motion.
2+4.
I'll make a substitute motion to bring back 2+2 and 2+4, to bring back both.
For first reading. Ms. Kopp, is that, yeah, the only,
One absent member.
yeah, we got one absent member and one resigned. Ms. Kopp, how, that just sets us back one more meeting
Correct.
series-wise, because, my only concern is we got to get something on the books for these businesses and these residents, so they know what to expect in 19. So we have a substitute motion. If the second will agree to it, the substitute motion is to bring 2 written ordinances, one with 2+2 to consider, and one with 2+4. Do I see it? Okay, do you agree to that second? To the friend?
I seconded his, so I don't know.
Yeah, you have to agree to the friendly.
Can we second 2 of them? Because I seconded his.
Yeah, because he's making a friendly.
He's adding an amendment.
All right, well, I'll second that then.
Okay, so we're good, right, Kyle?
Ray, do you understand what the motion is?
Yes. So I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? Motion passes. So moved. All right. In the answer, it's 9:32. I'm going to try to get through this next one before we take a break. Unless the council, are you guys ready just to straight through? Everybody good? Okay, we're not going to take a break. The next one, Kyle, do you want to go ahead and lead us into that one?
Okay, we have for first reading, ordinance number 18-30-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida relating to commercial activity in residential areas, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, creating definitions for commercial uses, commercial special events, and commercial special event venues, providing for amendments to Articles 3, 7, and 9 of the Land Development Code, amending Table 7-2, Table of Allowable Uses in Zoning Districts to prohibit commercial special event venues in all residential districts, providing for incorporation into the Code of Ordinances, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Again, this is a public hearing, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Kopp now.
Ms. Kopp.
And this is the same ordinance you discussed at the last meeting as well. It's here on first reading to prohibit commercial events in residential areas. And just to clarify and clear up any confusion, this ordinance does not prohibit people from having weddings in their home unless it's for commercial gain. So you can have a wedding for your family member in your home, actually as many times as you want, but generally people don't do that more than once in a while. But anyway, this is to prohibit weddings for commercial gain and any other similar parties that are listed in the definition as well. If you have questions, I'll answer them, but otherwise the process on this one will be, if you approve it on first reading, it will be scheduled for LPA in January prior to coming back here for second reading.
Thank you, Ms. Kopp. And what I'll do, Mr. Morgan, do you want to talk now, or you go ahead and let public comment go first? Okay, you want to do that, and then I'll have you up first? All right, what we'll do right now is anyone want to speak on this ordinance as written? This is the first reading. It's all in the briefing document. Anyone have any further discussion from the public? Seeing none, Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, shoot, sorry, I was gonna make the motion. I move to approve ordinance 18-30-LC on first reading and direct staff to advertise ordinance 18-30-LC for a review by the LPA.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion, I got a second. Any discussion or questions for Ms. Kopp? Seeing none, let's go ahead. I think we hashed it out pretty good last time. Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote. The vote is unanimous, so moved. Thank you. Kyle.
All right, we have the second reading of ordinance number 18-26-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, amending Article 2 of the Land Development Code to amending the application categories for vested rights determinations, providing for authority, providing for incorporation into the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Again, this is a public hearing.
All right. And do you have anything to add to that, Ms. Kopp?
No, you've seen this before. No changes since the last time.
Okay. We're our second reading. Is there any public comment on this from anyone in the audience at this time? Seeing none.
Move to approve ordinance 18-26-LC on second reading.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, let's take it to a vote. The vote is unanimous, so moved. Kyle?
We have the second reading of ordinance number 18-28-CC, an ordinance of the City of Destin relating to city waterways, providing for additional findings of fact, providing for the amendment of Section 5-2, obstructing channels, unlawful anchoring, mooring, or docking, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
Captain Green's not here, so I know he's not going to speak to it. Does anybody in the audience want to speak about this? We went over it in fairly concise detail at our last city council meeting. Seeing no further public comment, Mr. Morgan?
I would make the motion, but out of respect for Eric and the two other people that waited 3 hours, Eric let me know that he wanted to have input on this on the second reading along with two other people that were with him. So I would ask that we kick this to the next meeting, and if we could have staff, I'll make a motion to kick it to the next meeting and have staff schedule it maybe a little higher since it's not so controversial.
Has anybody got a problem with that? We have a motion made to move it to the next meeting,
I'll second it, Mayor.
and we have a second.
Chatham, just to clarify, that date certain is going to be January 7th.
January 7th.
That motion does include date certain of January 7, Ray? Okay, does anyone have any further discussion on that? Seeing none, let's vote. Votes unanimous. We'll have this on the agenda at the January 7th meeting. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. All right. Consent agenda. Go
I'll
ahead.
make the motion, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'll make the motion to accept the contract.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's take it to a vote. Unanimous, so moved. Mr. Braden?
I'm good, Mayor, thank you.
Ms. Ramswell?
Thanks, and I don't know, Mr. Warren, did you upload the 2 photos for the public to see as well? So I wish Mr. Sandstead and Michelle were still here because this sort of builds on their idea. They, as you all saw earlier, the banner art and trying to work with banner art and getting local artists involved in the community. I love that idea. And on a recent trip to New Orleans, I met a woman who gets local artists involved in the community by painting, as you see behind her right here, the utility boxes. So instead of having the big giant green or gray or whatever color, metal things everywhere, they actually get the local artist involved, and they create like a wooden crate that actually fits over it, and they paint it. And I just thought that was such a simple, cool way to spruce up an area and involve the community that I wanted to just bring it forward as an idea, maybe something that we can discuss as something to look into and talk with our new community development director or something. But I loved this idea and thought it would be so simple to implement. So that's really all I have tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Ramswell. Fits right in with the banner program for sure. Mr. Dick, sorry about that, folks. I'm tired too. I'm with everyone else, and I appreciate everybody being so patient and toughing it out with all of us. And even though Mr. Dix is not here, we did address the curve on Airport Road with Mr. Menschel's presentation, so that's good. Mr. Overdeer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two things tonight. First, I think our city staff has done a fantastic job this year. They've supported everything in spite of all the turmoil that I think has gone on and continues to go on in the city of Destin. The city employees continue to do just a fantastic job. And it's kind of in recognition of that, what I would propose is this year, since New Year's Eve falls on a Monday and they're already off on Tuesday, January 1st, I would propose, and I don't know if I have to make a motion or how you have to phrase this, but I would propose that we close city facilities on December 31st, 2018.
I'll second
Christmas
that.
is already on their
Make that in form
list.
of motion. It's good.
Yeah, that's a motion.
And we got a second from Ms. Ramswell.
Christmas Eve is already an approved holiday, so they already get Christmas Eve off.
I'm not working, so I'm with them. I'm going to be at a hockey game.
You didn't ever hear the analogy that whatever happened, whatever you do on New Year's Day, you do all year long?
We have a motion and we have a second, and it's a minor token and a reward to our city staff for toughing out a tough year in 2018. So I support that wholeheartedly as well. Any further discussion on that?
Yeah, I wonder what Tuffy would do here. This is kind of one of those curveballs that you never know which way he's going to go.
That's not fair for us to
Tuffy, if
have
you're
that
watching,
discussion at this point, Mr. Morgan.
I'll be your proxy.
So let's take it to a vote. Vote is unanimous. Y'all get an extra day off.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. You hear that peanut gallery over there?
Okay, the other item that I have, I'm on the Legislative Policy Committee for the Florida League of Cities, and tomorrow night they're going to have a legislative delegation meeting up at Northwest Florida State College, where our legislators, Mel Ponder and Senator Gaynor and some other folks are going to be up there. And so I'm going to make a presentation to them on behalf of the Florida League of Cities that talks about supporting legislation that restores local zoning authority with respect to short-term rental properties. And basically it boils all down to this home rule that we really push for in the Florida League of Cities. It's to preserve the integrity of the Florida residential neighborhoods and communities. And what it is the Florida League of Cities opposes legislation that preempts municipal authority as it relates to the regulation of short-term rentals. And last year they had two bills, I think, Senate Bill 1400 and Senate Bill 1640, that tried to do that. And there's every reason to suspect that something like that will raise its ugly head again and try to take home rule away from us as it relates to short-term rentals. So I'll make that presentation on behalf of the Florida League of Cities, but what I wanted to ask was, does the city of Destin or this council want me to make that recommendation on their behalf as well, or do you want me to just represent the Florida League of Cities?
No, I think, Skip, even though we've been wrestling with the issue, at least we have the say. And I think there's not, myself personally, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of the council members, but as hard as it is, and as difficult as it's been, we do want to have that determination capability as a local city, local council to institute whatever short-term rental is, ordinances or rules or regulations we want. We definitely don't want to acquiesce to the state because we may not, our best interest may not be served. I'll open this for any of the council members to speak, but I would recommend that you carry on the Florida League of Cities message and just put ditto on the city of Destin. If there's any council member that would be opposed to that.
He missed me.
No, that was on purpose. You had nothing to say.
Yeah. No, you did that on purpose.
Go ahead, Ms. Marley.
I'm not going to discuss the turn lane as I'm trying to set up a meeting with a representative from DOT so I can show the side of the coin that I see the issue on that. But I do have a couple of kudos. We had the Matty Kelly Sounds of the Seasons last night. We had two performances at the Destin United Methodist Church, which were filled to capacity for both performances, and my kudos to all those that have participated and all those that came and watched and enjoyed the music. I love singing with it, and it's a wonderful thing to do. And the second kudo goes to Councilman Overdeer, who on Saturday was the master of ceremonies at the wreath-laying ceremonies at the cemeteries, which is a national thing that goes all over the United States. He did a great job, and we put a lot of wreaths out on our deceased veterans of their various wars at not only the Destin Cemetery, but also over at the Marlin Memorial Cemetery. So kudos to Skip for his emceeing job on Saturday.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Just one thing to piggyback on, since he isn't going to say anything about it, but I was at the TPO meeting this last week, and I talked to the FDOT representative that comes to our TPO meeting, and I got assurances from him that they will readdress this right turn lane into the Emerald Grant coming off the bridge, but the contract has already been let, and the money has already basically been spent to have the turn lane right now only go into that first turn in. So it'll come back before the TPO, and I'll do everything I can at that time to push it, to get it, to finish it up and get it to where we can turn in by the stoplight, but that's not going to happen on this project.
Thank you, Skip. And I knew I passed you up, Mr. Marler, for a reason, because you didn't say nothing about me emceeing the Christmas boat parade. So I'm just going to let that slide for tonight. I'm sorry. I did a wonderful job, if I say so myself.
And there were some obviously beautiful.
I just pulled my arm, pat myself on the back. Land use attorney, Ms. Kopp.
Yeah, I know you all have heard too much from me tonight already, but last thing, based on Ordinance 1806 LC, I'm required at the second meeting of every month to give you an update on the TRC committee, and just letting you know that it hasn't met yet, but it will begin in February, and it will be meeting on the third Tuesday of the month at 11 o'clock. That'll be posted on the city's website.
Thank you, Ms. Kopp. Be fast, sir.
Yeah, I've got two items. The first is our contract with our city manager, Lance Johnson. We've talked about this privately. There's not a whole lot difference between Lance's current contract that I've presented to you today and Crease's contract on the date of separation. Benefits are pretty much exactly the same. The contract substantively is the same. I like to think that even Tuffy would have approved of my negotiating, but since he's not with us any longer, I guess I won't know. So if y'all are, if you like the city manager contract, the recommended motion would just be to approve the city manager contract and direct the mayor to execute the contract.
Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Okay, I have a motion. Second. And we have a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Dixon's not here, so let's vote. Ayes have it, so moved unanimously. Kyle.
The second issue is fairly serious. I've talked with you all privately about this. This is related to the East Pass dredge. So as you know, the city's been named as a respondent in an administrative complaint filed by John Donovan, David, and Rebecca Sherry. Originally, they had named the Army Corps and FDP as the respondents to this administrative complaint. Last week, they amended that administrative complaint and named the city of Destin. This requires us to take some action. It's a very highly specialized area of law. One that I believe the council would be best served is if you directed the city manager to hire a special outside counsel on this. To that end, I have spoken with a gentleman in Tallahassee named Ken Ortel of the law firm Ortel, Fernandez, Bryant, and Atkinson, PA. He is very well versed in sand issues, which occur throughout the state, basically fights over where you place dredged sand. He's been involved on both the city side and the petitioner's side before. His rate would be $300 an hour, which sounds expensive, but I can tell you that for his specialty or his expertise in this area, is pretty cheap. That's a pretty good rate for him.
Does this fall under our insurance, seeing how we've been named?
That is something that we can look at. For these types of administrative complaints, though, there's probably not going to be coverage.
Will you and Lance look into that?
We will look into that.
Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys to direct the city manager to take the steps necessary to hire the law firm Ortel, Fernandez, Bryan, and Atkinson to represent the city in the administrative action titled John Donovan, David Sherry, and Rebecca Sherry versus City of Destin, Florida, and FDEP, OGC case number 1801463. So that would be what I ask at first. And then after that, I also would like you guys to consider calling a special executive session for the next.
Okay. Can I fish for that motion? Anybody want to put their name on it?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
All right.
I'll second that.
Mr. Marler made that motion as read, and we have a second. Does any discussion from the council?
Does this make 7 attorneys now we have on payroll?
Well, we keep getting sued.
We have a total of 7 we're paying.
Well, in this case, this ties directly to what Captain Green was here for tonight, in asking for me to declare an emergency issue with the thing. They originally filed that complaint against the county in the Florida DEP, but when I guess they must have caught word that we were going to try to use our Norrego Point permit, and they're pretty tricky folks, so they've named us in the complaint. So this is, unfortunately, this is a battle that's worth fighting for our community. So yeah, I guess that'll be.
So they should let their
we
meeting be public.
We can ask our city manager to give us a head count, at some point, if you'd like, sir. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further comment? Let's go ahead and vote on this. It's unanimous, so moved, and now we need a motion to enact a special executive meeting.
So I'd ask that you guys consider passing a motion calling for an executive session in the same case, which is John Donovan, David Sherry, and Rebecca Sherry versus City of Destin, Florida, and FDP, OGC case number 1801463. And at this executive session, all members of City Council will be present. I guess the possible new appointed City Council member will have to be excluded because we'll need to have this one at 5 since we have the other special meeting at 5:30. But all other members will be present along with the city land use attorney, the city attorney, the city manager, and also special counsel.
It'll be our first meeting, so I'm sure that just having that one person missing will not be that critical, right? So you want to do that motion time certain?
Yeah, let's make it since we did the other one at 5:30, let's do this one at 5. And if we run over, we can always push things back. But the reason this is important is just because it's a very technical area of law, and I really think Ken Ortel needs to be here to provide you guys that overview of the law and some of the strategy moving forward, and which he shared privately with me. He believes we have some defenses. So.
Okay, so do I have somebody that would like to put their name on that motion, basically?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, so that's the motion is read by city attorney. We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, so moved. Oh, voting. Didn't know myself. It's after 9. That is unanimous. So
Hey, Mayor.
moved.
Mayor.
Yes,
Mayor,
sir.
Mayor. Can Mr. Steve speak, please? Sure. Thank you.
Hey, when in grade school we used to go, ooh, 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 ooh.
No, this is a good thing, okay? Steve Menschel, 65 Siesta Bluff. Skip made a motion, and it was great acknowledging the staff, and that's a great thing. And no matter how contentious everything was and how many hours y'all battled and everything else, you all deserve a thank you as well. You all have put in a lot of hours this year, okay? And you might be battling, but you all deserve a thanks. And then there's a second person that you didn't acknowledge that deserves thanks too, that has to sit here through all that, and that's Captain Nix, okay? And we need to thank him as well, okay? So, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Seeing no further hands, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned.
Yeah.